Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well on this nice Thursday evening. I'm sorry if there was a bit of a hiccup in the chat. I am dumb and for some reason hit stop streaming instead of moving on to scene 2, so I want to make sure this played out. Let me go ahead and give some ground foundation here to what we're talking about. Chimerama is an artist. How am I really low still? Hold on, let me fix this. For some reason, this only happens on streams. Let me see here. Is that any better? Is that better for all the loudness? Okay, awesome. Okay, so Chimerama is an artist, and about 4 years ago, she wound up having a video made on her by Ponder Sprocket. And she has laid low for a while. And hello to all you, chat. Hello, Cat. I see you there. And I see Chimerama's previous target in the chat. Hello. I hope you're doing okay after all of this. So, and I'm surprised I just heard about this today, because usually the gossip lines tend to run pretty quickly. But Chimerama on her new channel, Aurora Dite, which is linked in the description, did a video called I Used to Be Chimerama, Let's Catch Up. And in this video, she tries to detail some of her side of things and then gives us catching up on things that have happened. So, I want to be very clear here. The purpose of the stream is not to inherently dunk on this individual. It's to hear what they have to say, respond if we have sufficient things that may contradict what they are saying, and go from there. I will tell you all right now, Chimerama does talk about some relationship abuse in this, and we're not going to mock that. We're not going to sit there and call them a liar. There are things we are not going to do. And that's going to be that. They did some messed up stuff. They are not, to my knowledge, and I'll have to re-listen because I have people saying that she admitted to being in a polycule that involved minors, but I'm pretty sure she was a child then too. But to my knowledge, she hasn't done anything on that level of degenerate, so we're not going to call her that, and we're not going to assume that she's some unforgivable individual. She was 21. Okay, I will re-listen to this. And yes, for you, always Heaton. So I'll go ahead and give Heaton a ring-a-ding-ding real quick, and then we'll get into the video.
Always for me.
Good evening, my dearest Heaton. What can we do for you today?
What's good, gamers? I am here to share with you a quick little thought, because so I watched the video. I watched the whole thing before the stream because I wanted to know what the fuck was going on. So I have one little thought to give to you, to give to the gangs today.
Okay.
So I think for the most part, my feelings have not changed. I think that the situation was handled really not it was not handled very well, and I think that it did come down to a lot of like group chat drama, which is ridiculous and nonsense and whatever. And I want to say that I agree with that before I talk about this, because the one thing that I feel like there is one aspect of this I feel like was not handled well on the opposing side, and she talks about it a little bit. Have you watched the video yet?
I have.
Okay, so she brings up a really solid point about something I've talked about for a very long time. And this is the only reason I'm here sharing to you this thought in particular, is because it's something that I've said for a very long time. I think that it is a very, I think it's something that we don't talk about enough in the community side of, as somebody who deals with like fuck shit, I
Mm-hmm.
guess is the best way to put it. As somebody who enjoys fuck shit, um I feel like we don't talk enough about how this side of the community is not gated off correctly.
You're talking about putting in proper tags and gatekeeping to keep children out of it, right?
Yes.
Okay,
The
that's
th- the
reasonable.
thing this bec- yeah, because this is something that like that Ponder talked about, and Ponder and I have talked about this. So
Mm-hmm.
so she knows I feel this way. The one thing I feel like is not handled very well, and it's something that Chimerama talks about in her own personal relationships later on, is that I feel like when people who don't have the knowledge, the experience, the the world weariness to get into fuck shit, it becomes very easy for people to take advantage of them. And I think that a lot of people don't understand that there should be more protection around it, more barriers to the content. Yes, because like the thing is, the only really solid critique that I saw of, because you're in the chat, I'm going to use they them pronouns because I don't know what your pronouns are, but the only solid critique I ever saw of Dreamalgia was don't fucking cross tag. That's it. It's like you the thing is when we deal with shit like when you deal with shit like self-harm, like abuse, gore, body horror, like fuck shit. I feel like the community is really quick to brush that off as like you're not wrong. Yeah, like that's the one real critique that I've ever really had that I think was valid and that I think was not addressed correctly is because like it becomes the community has a weird double standard where, and you and I have talked about this,
Mm-hmm.
Lio,
We have.
where the community's like really willing to be like, no, we have to gatekeep minors from sex, which is right, which is correct. You
Mm-hmm.
do. That's not the point. I feel like there's a double standard though, where like they're like we have to gatekeep minors around sex, but like violence and gore content, nobody gives a fuck.
Well, that can be true, but I also think there's a reason why that's not something that immediately pokes in people's brain. That goes back to the old, lizard brain stuff. Okay, so a bit of an anecdote. When I was a child, my
Mm-hmm.
parents were very strict about what we would watch, to the point that they would make sure that they would watch whatever it is. It's why we didn't watch the X-Men cartoon from the 90s, and I can hear the chat gasping now. It's because of all the episodes, my mom had to watch the one with Apocalypse and his four horsemen, found it to be a mockery of the Bible, and said, no. So
Yeah.
I think, and again, going back to what I experienced, stuff like The Simpsons, Beetlejuice, the movie or the cartoon, stuff like that, verboten, was not permitted in the household. Predator, on the other hand, and
Right.
Rambo, First Blood, and the sequel, I think the reason why a lot of people don't immediately switch the same flip or flip the same switch is because inherently in our lizard brain, we recognize that violence and death can literally happen at any time. So we
Right.
don't think
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. Uh, the thing is, when I grew up as a kid, exposed to a lot of violence from old internet, so it's definitely an adjustment I have to be. Exactly. This is what I'm talking about. I'm putting together a whole video talking about this in like I bring this up a little bit in the Yap session that's coming out Friday. Plug 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 plug. But I do want to write like a whole video about this because like as a horror content creator, like when I said in my urban spook video that like there's ethics to this and there's a right way to do it, a lot of people made fun of me.
What?
And they were like I saw a lot of people being like ethics in horror media fucking, and I'm like, yeah, there are, because like we're not in a world where you can just post unsolicited gore anymore. Like that fucks people up. And like a lot of people don't understand that like you can become so desensitized to something so fast if you're not like so like I feel like a lot of I feel like a lot of the early discussion about this specific facet of this topic was because like I'm not I'm not gonna get into it because like she'll get into it later and but when she talks about how the person she was dating convinced her to get into some fuck shit.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about that. We're definitely going to be talking
Yeah.
about that because I have some concerns.
Yeah. As somebody that something similar happened to, not the same, it wasn't nearly as intense, but I had somebody who was older try to get me to do some fuck shit. The difference was that I was like, that's scary, and then I blocked them and ran away.
And for the record, chat, I am an older man trying to get Heaton into Transformers, but Heaton says, no, they have articulation. That's bad.
They do, that's cringe. Statues are dumb. What? Watch, I'll be like, no, I got Transformers figures, and you'll be like, oh, that's awesome, and I'll show you the fucking hot girl Megatron.
And I will call it an Action Master, and you won't understand why.
No, I don't know what the fuck that means.
Exactly.
But like that's the but like as somebody, it's so easy to walk because those things are more easily available. It's so easy to walk somebody. It's so easy to take somebody's hand and lead them from, oh, we'll watch The Exorcist. We'll go here. We'll go here. But like you'll take hands and you'll walk them down these points, and because there's no gate like there should be, because like when typically when somebody talks you into like a sexual topic, you have to like, oh, you have to convince them that that's like that it's okay for you to bypass a barrier that's already there. But it's way easier now to walk somebody into like gore, violence, like that kind of content than it ever should be. Gotta be heading out soon. Thank you for hearing my message. OMG, have a good night. Yeah, like I'm proud of you, by the way. I'm proud of your growth and your development. Head pats, you're doing good shit.
And I will have to just agree with Heaton because I have not paid any attention, so I cannot give you the head pat, but I will assume that Heaton is right here.
I will tag your content. Listen, I have, for those of you who don't like follow me, this is a big thing I've been yelling about for years. I have a whole segment of my horror streams where unironically, we sat down for 20 minutes and we're like, let me explain to you why the medium's content warning is the worst shit imaginable. Like, we have a whole segment that's called How Bad is the Content Warning? Because I think this is really important. And I think that it's really important before even talking about this, just before going into it, to know that like taking advantage of somebody who doesn't have like, okay, perfect example, because she talks about like, I lived in a really religious household. I was really well sheltered.
I will be talking about that. Don't worry.
Right. No, I'm gonna use myself as an example because Justin's like that. For an example of how sheltered Justin is, he had not seen The Princess Bride until I moved into this house. They raised that child on I Love Lucy.
Oh God, that poor kid. Not that I Love Lucy's a problem, mind you.
No.
The main reason why we watched Princess Bride when we were kids is to identify all the stuff in the kids' room.
Oh yeah,
that's He-Man.
Oh, he'll fucking unironically, he's sooner to make an I Love Lucy reference than a SpongeBob reference and be like, that was my childhood. Justin's 85. But like, it's so easy for me because Justin's getting into horror. He's watching some horror stuff with me and Cherry. We're coaxing him into our side. it didn't occur to me until dealing with somebody who is as sheltered as Justin, how easy it is for me to get him to watch things that I know could really fuck him up and just not tell him.
I see. Makes
Like,
sense.
because like there's things you can like, for example, when we watched fucking Hereditary, because Justin's told me before he's got a thing about like brainwashing, about like demon possession, that kind of shit. And it would have been so easy for me to be like, no, that doesn't happen in this movie. I don't know what you're talking about. And like just get him to participate in shit that he wouldn't know anything about.
Yeah.
It's so easy. It's so easy when somebody is that sheltered to walk them face first into something that's incredibly fucked up. And then when they turn and look at you and go, "What the fuck is that?" You look at them and go, "No, that's normal." Because like just because we don't have as much of an immediate repulsive response to it as we do with sex. And I
Yeah.
think that's fucked up. And I think
Well,
that's fucked up. I think that's fucked up, and I think that we shouldn't do that. Your opinion of Dead Meat, it helped me get over my fear of horror. Dead Meat's rad. I love James A. Janice. I unironically, I watch Dead Meat so that I can know going into a movie if it'll have fuck shit in it that I can't deal with. It's a
I,
fucking great Dead Meat's based. I like him. He's cool. James A. Janice rules.
I,
Lio
I
doesn't
just
know. He's
I just found horror. I find horror movies just horrifically boring.
it's almost listen, I'm gonna hold your hand so delicately. You should internalize that.
What?
It's
What does
a
that even
joke.
mean?
It's a joke that my therapist made. I was like, I've been watching a lot of horror movies lately, and I was describing them to her, and she's like, "And you watch these for fun?" I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "You want to think about why that is?" And I'm like, "No, I don't actually."
Oh, I know why I find them boring. You live in a house that has demons in it when you're a kid. You find very little scary after that.
Exactly, exactly. That's my joke. Is like, do you want to maybe think about like the reason why you don't find terror in basic things? Do you want to think about that? And that's on trauma response.
Oh goodness.
I do like The Thing. I like the original The Thing. It's a
Yeah,
lot. It's really good.
I like Ben
It's
Grimm
aged
too.
it's aged remarkably well. Unlike the Fantastic Four, but that's a different stream.
You leave Jack Kirby's personal representation of himself and his Jewish heritage alone.
Oh no, I had I had a conversation with Justin. I'm not even gonna like get into this because this is a whole ass aside. My beef with the modern Fantastic Four is that they have not changed with the times. And I think that the fact of the matter is that while everything else in Marvel modernizes for better or worse, truly, to fit the modern era, the Fantastic Four has kind of remained like a bastion of that time period, and it's why Reed Richards is like that TM still,
I see.
but now we all hate him is because that kind of man is just not a good person anymore.
Yeah, probably. All right. Well, we could get into comics, but we're here to look at the video, so I'm going to go ahead and get started on this, Heaton, and I can talk to you later.
Okay. Yeah. TLDR. I think that we should moderate your horror better. Don't be an irresponsible dickhead. You don't know what you could be causing later down the lines. Bada bingus, bada bongus.
Bye bye, Heaton.
Goodbye.
I love it when Heaton pops around. Okay, so a couple things very important to the chat. I need to let you guys know that while I'm listening to this, I am going to be fiddling with something. I got the NECA original sketch Ninja Turtles in, and I love the big one because he's fully painted, so he's got this really smooth texture, and I love it. And he's chonky. Like, he looks and feels like a real turtle chonky, and that's very important, so I'm letting you know. Anyways, we're going to be dealing with some very heavy topics here. There's going to be discussions of abuse, not okay things. Of course, the discussion about the harm depicted in this art. And I'll give you guys my own opinion here because I do come from a very, very theologically inclined household, and I still keep a lot of those core values in me. And I'm not saying that as in like they're traumatic, the values themselves. I mean, like, I still hold them because there's value there, even if the way I was taught wasn't good. So Who'll be messaging me on the beepity beep? Oh. Not related to the stream. Anyways. Real quick to start. I did get the Nemesis LioConvoy. He's okay. He's not better than the original, unfortunately. And I was asked if I either played or watched something, and I didn't. So, Lio isn't scared of horror because he reads the Bible and the most disturbing books ever compiled. No, there's been far more disturbing books. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into this. And I'm doing it at 1.5 speed.
Hello. If you're new, I would like to apologize beforehand that this is a very traumatic series of events and you're about to be in for the long haul, if you decide to stick around, that is.
I don't know how to turn off my notifications. I am old and I use the browser form of Discord.
However, if you read the title and clicked on this video already knowing the context, nice to see you again. I hope you stick around to the end. I'm gonna
Okay, we're not gonna mock when they say something's traumatic. Let's not do that. It varies from person to person.
try to recall everything I can, though I am bound to get details mixed up or wrong. I'm not actually looking into the nitty-gritty details or trying to debate with anyone, because for the most part, I am speaking from a first-person perspective. A lot of the things I experienced during that time were very traumatic for me, and so looking back for evidence when I don't really intend to start an argument just seems like a waste of my energy and sanity. I just want to go forward with the clear intent that I'm not trying to spark up any drama or beat a dead horse. I suppose I'm just tired. I'm tired of people having a skewed perspective of me based on two creators who didn't even know me personally, and I'm tired of that view following me around everywhere I go. I've had to hop from account to account and rebrand, and at first it really was because I was running. I didn't know how to handle it then, and I hardly know how to address it now, but I want to try, and I'm at peace that not everyone will hear me out or choose to listen.
And that's actually something I want to touch on here. Reflecting on not just my own actions, because obviously I'm going to be doing that, but also talking about how we deal with some of this stuff, sometimes in a greater online space. It sometimes has more impact than we want it to. So, for the case of Chimerama here, and I changed it to Do Not Disturb. We'll see if that works. The case of Chimerama here, while I'm not going to fault Ponder for making the video, because I talked to Ponder and I fully know why she did it, and I'm not going to fault her for that, because, and we'll get into it later, this person was given a lot of grace. You guys know I'm pretty long-suffering. Ponder gave this person more grace than I give most people. The effect of that, especially if you are online actually chronically, is that it can really mess with you. And the creators sometimes, like Ponder I know for a fact does, and when it's something less than predation or stalking or whatever I try to, is they want to see change, but sometimes these people just freak out and run. And because of the nature of the socialness of the internet, when they're found on new accounts, people just keep harassing them instead of just taking a step back and saying, okay, what are they going to do? If they don't change and they repeat this behavior, well, then you address it again. But if it's not something that is like horrifically egregious, maybe the audience shouldn't do that. Just maybe. I don't know. Deeper thoughts for another day.
I'm okay with that. If I can give at least a few people some insight on what was going on with me and give a more rounded explanation of myself as a person rather than a topic of interest, then I am glad to be here and actually making this. I do want to preface that this story does involve a lot of triggering things, and I do talk quite a lot about mental health, so if you're not in the right mindset...
Okay, so here's what the trigger warning says for those who can't read it. Probably all of you. The mention and discussion of the following will appear in this video. Abuse, pedophilia, SA, grooming, manipulation, isolation, gaslighting, self-harm, removing yourself from the census, etc.
Set to be hearing about these subjects, please click off and watch later if you're so inclined. I'm going to be giving some history on myself, how I grew up, things that went wrong, and things that never really got caught, as well as just a rundown of what I have been doing and dealing with and the after effects of the situation back in December of 2020. I'm going to be keeping my childhood as brief as possible and explain what I must when we get there, but I have a feeling that this section still might be lengthy as I am the yapper. I grew up in a Christian household of specifically the Baptist denomination, and I have 3 older siblings. As the youngest in my family, and with my parents and siblings all being raised with a very Puritan mindset, I was heavily, and I mean heavily, sheltered. I never really played outside with the neighborhood children because...
A bit of... probably a misnomer, but it's not really Puritan, but, you know, I understand what you're trying to communicate.
Were all very, very mean and hurt my siblings before me. I recall a memory when I did try to play with them, but I was very young, like younger than 5, and they decided to take a cactus from the lady who lived next door's garden and try and play catch with it, with me and my brother. I still remember having to sit on the kitchen floor with him and my mom as she tweezed out the pricklies from our skin. So I didn't really have friends.
And that's when your parents should have said, all right, little Chimerama, here's a baseball bat. and don't do permanent damage.
Outside of my family for a very long time. I think the exception to this was my two best friends at the church my family attended, but after we moved away, contact with them was incredibly slim. I think I've seen them 3 or 4 times since I moved. We moved when I was 6, and I'm 23. My family started attending another church, and as for my education, I went to public school for 1st grade. And that's it. Every year after that, I was homeschooled. I believe I started going to technically public school, but it was entirely online, and all of the classes were held in a Skype/Zoom-like setting, so I didn't get to have friends in school, and if I did, it was all online. I did make friends with the neighborhood kids, but with my hindsight being 2020, I feel I was less of a friend to them and more of a toy box, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's actually a real point of concern here, because if she didn't have much in the way of real-world socialization, and hate to say it, as much as school sucks, and it does, that gives you a lot of real-world socialization there. So that is going to, by nature, stunt you one way or another and make it to where you're not going to be able to handle situations very well. I've known people who were homeschooled their entire lives, and Heaton was talking earlier about Justin not really watching, Princess Bride. The people I met when I first moved to Texas, the only people in the church that was my age, she didn't, the daughter there I talked to, she didn't even know who Rambo was. Like, not even, like, culturally, which is odd because we live in America. So I know that can have an extremely negative effect. And the unfortunate thing is a lot of times when parents do the sheltering thing, they think they're keeping their kids safe, but all they're really doing is just putting a time bomb on them. Because one thing that's the importance of parents is to prepare their children, not to shelter them from everything. If your kid wants to learn how to ride a bike without the training wheels on, sometimes you got to let them get some scraped knees. And in the case of this, you sometimes just have to let your kid understand, be aware of the danger, and have them face that. Another example is, say, when you're working out, right? You're never going to get stronger by staying at the same weight in your bench press. If you bench press 100 and that's all you ever bench press, you are going to plateau and you're not going to gain. If you start slapping more weights on there incrementally, then you're going to grow. But that takes work, and it hurts. It actually breaks down your muscles in micro fractures. Or micro tears, rather. Fractures is when you do the hard body training by hitting stuff. But growth comes through opposition. So you have to expose them one way or another. And it's better for you as a parent to let them know what the world is like as well as you can while maintaining safety and letting them know there are ways to deal with it.
One girl only liked me because of what I had, and the boys I'd play with didn't treat me right physically. So I was in a familiar setting when I was minuscule. My only friends were at church. I was bullied or tolerated by kids who weren't my family, and my family still kept me sheltered by homeschooling me and refusing to educate me on things I should have known when I was growing up. All of this to say, I didn't have the same exposure as a lot of other kids did. To say I was sheltered is an understatement. I mean, the church we went to before my move enforced the craziest shit. No magic in movies or shows unless it was some allegory to Christianity. No music outside of the contemporary Christian genre. You weren't allowed to wear skirts above your ankles. You had to go to college to be seen as intellectual, and so many more things.
Okay, so what she's describing here, that doesn't sound like a Baptist church. That sounds like either like some far more strict Pentecostal church, or maybe it's regular UPC church. I don't know. That's the standards they often go by. Is none of this, none of that. We're going to make sure everything's shut out, and then they wonder why their children. Not Mormons. Mormons are actually more strict in some ways than the Pentecostals. No, they're specifically them talking about skirts, like not above the knee or above the ankle or whatever. That's not a Baptist thing. That is so not a Baptist thing. Unless we're talking about some offshoot of Baptists. The thing I know about Baptists is if you ever want a good barbecue, man, them Southern Baptists know what they're doing.
Fortunately, I was young enough to not have experienced it to a degree of trauma, but those things did kind of cling to my parents even after we moved. So even for a few years after we were out of that cult church, I was still experiencing the
Yeah, her calling it a cult church makes me think that it's probably not Baptist.
Repercussions of my family attending it. I wasn't allowed to watch Harry Potter. I couldn't watch Care Bears. I couldn't watch Pokemon. I couldn't even collect certain toys I saw in the store.
Well, I mean, in fairness, you can just read Lord of the Rings. It's much better than Harry Potter.
And liked. I will forever be mad I never had Bratz. The Bratzilla witch dolls were so cool. It's funny that...
Well, here's what I can tell you as a professional toy collector. You can go buy them now. Depending on how much they are. I actually don't know anything about the Bratz.
I wasn't allowed to watch all of these things, but...
Because I'm a proud man. I'm a boy. Boys don't get no girl things. Now, excuse me while I hide my Sailor Moon collection.
Barbie and the Lord of the Rings was fine. But all that aside, the point is, I didn't grow up...
The way she said that, Barbie and Lord of the Rings is fine, it makes me think of some terrible crossover, which actually would be kind of kind of dope.
Normal. I had a lot of things in the way of me socializing normally, finding common interests with other kids, and especially the habit of not being able to think for myself for a long, long time. These rules and regulations that my parents enforced did ease over time, and I was able to start collecting Pokemon cards and playing games and Magic in it, but with everything that was already decided for me, I was left in a mindset that I wasn't allowed to think for myself, and so I hardly did. When my second to oldest sibling started drawing, I followed in their footsteps. I always liked being creative, but I didn't realize that you could draw and actually make money off of it or make stories with it. Don't ask for my line of logic. I don't think my little kid brain knew that movies and shows were drawn by hand. So I started drawing at a very young age. I still have art from...
Unfortunately, we are going to start asking your line of logic on other things here. Not that specifically, because obviously I'm not going to question your thought process as a kid. And when I hear idiots like John Kay say that they became an atheist when they realized that cartoons were made by people, I mean, some people, even as adults, have really goofy thought processes.
From when I was like 9 years old, and I've kept most of what I've drawn in a plastic box.
Okay, that is adorable. That's adorable that she kept that.
For keepsake reasons. I think it's fun to look back at where I started. That being said, when my sibling also started posting their art to social media, I wanted to as well. The introduction to social media was less social, and purely because I wanted to share my art online. I wasn't...
Words cannot express how happy I am that when I was a kid and started drawing in the 90s, social media like this didn't exist. There is so much cursed stuff I've drawn so far out there. Nothing like horrifying in the sense of like disgusting or degenerate, but just like 5 minutes after I share my art already, I hate it. I don't even want to think how I feel about it now 30-something years out.
Allowed to share these things until I was 13, and even then the only devices I had to post from were the family computer and my mom's iPad, so I wasn't online all the time. Though I was online all the time in the sense I played a lot of MMOs. But nevertheless, I did start posting online as soon as I turned 13, and I did become obsessed with the idea of my art being seen. I do think as a child who had very little of a social life outside of family members and friends at church, it was a very awkward beginning. I was also now being exposed to things I didn't really think about before, because growing up, my parents...
She wants to make sure her art's seen. I'm waiting for the government to stop my sinful hands.
Never really talked about issues that affected our country, so the concept of misogyny and racism never really clicked with me until later. I learned about slavery and the women's rights movement, but as a kid, it was less of history and more of a distant concept. I couldn't wrap my head around it for the longest.
Okay, now that actually does surprise me, because even in cult churches, the concepts of racism and all that are still there. In fact, the Jim Jones Church, like, one of the reasons why they became so popular, awful situation, of course, but the reason why they became so popular is because he was against racism and he let his congregation mix. So, yeah, it's just really strange to me. We're going to hear some more strangeness later on.
And the same went for how America was colonized. Like, I'm definitely more aware and educated on all of these things now, but it also didn't help that the curriculums that were being taught to me were very watered down and sugar-coated to seem like everything went right and all is good in the world. It's not, and I know that now, but my younger self did not. And anything that related to the LGBT community was never, ever brought up. It wasn't until I was online that I started seeing more things about the concept of boys liking boys or girls liking girls.
See, here's where part of it starts falling apart for me, in sense of some of her argumentation for her reasoning later on, is because she says, Bible, my parents were strict about it, I was in a cult. Here's the thing, regardless of what you take from the Bible, or how you twist it, or manipulate it for your own means, there's one thing that every group, regardless, agrees on. The Bible has people in it that it details that are just absolutely wicked, terrible. That's why they're there. Either they are redeemed by God, or they suffer a horrible fate. So her going on later on talking about how she didn't know that villainy and people like that existed, I find just so mind-blowing for her to say, because if she went to church and she believed in the Bible, she would know that they do. So it's just so surprising to me for her to make that argument.
Girls, or even the concept that there were more than two genders. I didn't realize transgender people existed. And while I can look back and know that little girl in Morticia had good intentions, she was in a spot that didn't allow her the empathy that I do now. Being raised a Christian and asking about these things and being told it was a sin, I took it to heart and saw it as law, reiterating that I couldn't think for myself whatsoever. Whatever my family...
And that's something I want to stick on to here right now real quick. So there's always a lot of back and forth about, sin and what we do with it, specifically as Christians. Here's what you do with the sin. If it's your sin, you repent and you change your ways. If it's somebody else's sin, you treat them with kindness. And you don't sit there and scream at them. It's not what God does to you, so don't do it to other people. It's just... so many Christians just miss it. It's like, hey, here's what doesn't come into heaven, literally listing off a myriad of people. But everybody likes to quote that part. Nobody likes to quote the rest of it where it says, and such were some of you. A point that Paul was trying to make in that was, hey, you're screw-ups too, knock it off. Thank you, Papa Hudson, for the $5. I am the terror that flaps in the night. I am the charge that is included with your iPhone, but is only 2 inches long. I am Darkwing Duck. Isn't it a common cult thing, the us versus them mentality, where they vilify those not in the congregation? Yes! And sometimes it's not even a cult thing. They're just regular, quote-unquote, regular churches that do that too. But even us versus them, I'm just trying to get the takeaway of here's what you should do.
Family said was what was right, and so I became a little conduit of Jesus' power to spread the good word and infect people with the Holy Spirit. The few online friends I did make at the time were always bombarded with my God talk, and I would like to apologize to anyone who did know me at that time. Regardless of whether you knew it or not, you talking to me about these things did in fact leave an impression, because I definitely do not believe that being LGBT is a sin anymore. I'm actually on the ace spectrum and I'm biromantic, so I found my way eventually.
Gay?
All this to say, I was posting a lot online, discovering concepts I didn't really know about or grasp fully, and becoming intertwined with communities as small as they were. And one of these communities that I managed to find myself in was Dolly Guts' community. I have always really liked dolls growing up. My mom would buy me Barbies, and I would watch a lot of the Barbie films that the dolls would pair to, and also had a bunch of porcelain dolls as well. I've always been a fan of them, and if I can find it, I think I even tried making a doll Sona at one point.
Read below. Okay, the art's cute, but I can't imagine if you try to read below and the little Dollander just winds up getting turned upside down. It's like, ah! Anywho, continuing.
But all this to say, I would frequent the doll hashtag a lot on Instagram, and that's how I discovered Tears' art. It was 2016, and when I found their art, I was absolutely obsessed with it.
Hold on, there was something I heard there I thought I maybe missed.
Well, I've always been a fan of them, and if I can find it, I think I even tried making a doll Sona at one point. But all this to say,
not far enough.
I'm actually on the ace spectrum, and I'm biromantic, so I found my way eventually. All of this to say, I was posting a lot online, discovering concepts I didn't really know about or grasp fully, and becoming intertwined with communities as small as they were. And one of these communities that I managed to find myself in was Dolly Guts' community. I have always really liked dolls growing up. My mom would buy me Barbies, and I would watch a lot of the Barbie films that the dolls would pair to, and also had a bunch of porcelain dolls as well.
Okay, I wasn't crazy. She said she had porcelain dolls. That's the big thing that terrifies me. So her parents wouldn't let her watch like Harry Potter movies and all that, but they'll let her have those horrifying porcelain dolls. Look, man, I got action figures of all sorts of things. I would never own a porcelain doll. Those things are freaky, man. I don't trust them. Lousy loser. The unfortunate thing about Christianity is it is often misunderstood as being kind and accepting no matter what, obviously with some acceptance. Yeah.
I've always been a fan of them, and if I can find it, I think I even tried making a doll Sona at one point. But all this to say, I would frequent the doll hashtag a lot on Instagram, and that's how I discovered Tears' art. It was 2016, and when I found their art, I was absolutely obsessed with it. I didn't realize people could draw like that, and to me it was super unique, and they instantly became an inspiration to me. I have art traditionally and digitally that you can definitely see the early onset of the Dolly Guts' art style and how much...
Well, I mean, I can't, because I'm not familiar with Dolly Guts' art. It looks like it's really inspired by, the Bratz dolls, honestly, with the size of the eyes.
They really influenced my work at the time.
Big
I followed
Monster
them
High?
everywhere. I studied how they drew things, and when I discovered they posted time-lapse videos of their drawings to YouTube, I studied those too. When I got Paint Tool Sai, I copied the brushes I saw on screen and tried to draw like them. And I didn't really know why I was so attached to their art and style of drawing, and I did discover why when I was older, but we'll get to that later. For now, let's just focus on me entering that community of combined morbid cute things. Entering that sphere was super fun for me because I remember finding people my age who drew similarly and all had OCs and had lore for them. It was great. One of these people
Lore!
I became super close with, and eventually I called my best friend, but I'm going to put a pin in that subject because that deserves its own section, and I don't want to get sidetracked. I finally felt like I was making friends because of having a shared interest in something, and my account at the time was pretty large for someone who was admittedly ripping off someone else. This is when my iconic OC Kira was made.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about that real quick. And I know I'm getting kind of in the weeds in general. When you're trying to learn something, it's not ripping them off, right? Every single artist has to learn by looking at something or someone else's work and figuring out how to copy it. I have a friend of mine, his name is Dusty Peterson, who, his work, it's not my genre, but his work is amazing. The dude's done, metal covers for metal bands, he does the art for them. And he told me, because I asked him years ago, I'm like, how do you know when your art's actually worth being able to sell? And his response to me, and other people may disagree with it, and I feel free to discuss it in chat or in the comments when this is up later on as a standalone. He said the way you can tell is when you can match another professional artist's skill. And how do you do that? By learning how it's done. Even Jack Kirby is quoted as saying, if you like the way somebody draws hands, steal their hands. And of course that's been memed to death because they thought of Carl, the Rumblies that only hands can satisfy. But the advice is still there because that's how humans learn to draw. My favorite comic artist is Jim Aparo. And that's why when I draw hands, I try to be detailed about them, because the way he draws hands is just freaking amazing. If you go to my Twitter and look at the banner, that's his art. With Batman reaching through the confessional, God, I love the way he draws hands. I love the way he draws in general. But this isn't you ripping anything off, Chimerama or Aurora Dite. This is just how an artist learns, and that's fine.
She's had a glow up since then, and I much prefer her design now.
I'm not complaining.
But, everyone has to start somewhere. One of the things I didn't realize was as negative as it was at the time was how normalized certain dark themes were becoming to me.
What would you do if I mailed you a porcelain doll? I would return to sender after I lit it on fire.
Both of my parents worked during the week, and my siblings were off doing their own things, so I was left unsupervised at my devices often. Subjects such as body horror, gore, self-harm, suicide, abuse, grooming, sexual assault, etc. were all things Tears' art focused on heavily. I didn't realize the weight of these things until much later.
Okay, so here's a question I'll have to ask, and I know Ponder's with her phase self, is through the chat somewhere, probably doing chores while listening and whatnot. I know the claim has been that the tagging was crossed, and that's how it got her into this. Is that accurate here? And if so, what should have been there, I suppose? Because I know the ultimate argument they're going to try to make later on is that they should have been gate-kept from this community. And perhaps there's some truth to that, but I also have to note that if the parents, because I'm assuming at this point in time, Aurora Dite, Chimerama here, was a minor, it is the parents' responsibility to monitor what the child consumes. And it's also the responsibility of an artist who puts out troubling things to properly tag their stuff. It's a conversation that I've had with people like Ponder and Heaton. I've even had this conversation with freaking Gilded Poo, believe it or not. And the value is this. People ask, is all art valid? Well, to a point, yes. There are people who draw art of horrifying, troubling things because they went through it, and it's a coping mechanism. That, in and of itself, I understand. And it's valid. However, that's art I don't think you should be sharing if it has really troubling stuff to it, to that extreme. If it's about personal venting to that degree, and if it's really heavy in the direction I'm kind of nudging towards, that should probably be kept in a personal portfolio. It should not be shared online. That's my personal value, but, whatever. I think the problem is that people tend to tag their pieces of whatever is present with the art, so you can have tags like gore alongside tags like doll. Well, in and of itself, it varies. Like, the cutesy gore stuff or whatever, say you have a drawing of a doll, but its arm is shattered, and, the ground around it's been growing up through the arm. It looks very gory, but, it's a porcelain doll. I think the more prevalent argument here is that if it does have a lot of gore or sexual themes, it should be tagged as 18 plus. Did Tirza, I can't remember what their name now is, did they tag them properly? And if not, I hope they've continued to do so and correct that.
To teenager Momo, these are all things that were fictitious and didn't really happen in real life. These were all things a villain would do, and villains don't actually exist and target people.
Okay, this is what I don't understand. All these things you just listed, you said, let's go back a little bit. I want to re-listen to that so we can understand.
Didn't realize was as negative as it was at the time was how normalized certain dark themes were becoming to me. Both of my parents worked during the week, and my siblings were off doing their own things, so I was left unsupervised at my devices often. Subjects such as body horror, gore, self-harm, suicide, abuse, grooming, sexual assault, etc. were all things Tears' art focused on heavily. I didn't realize the weight of these things until much later. To teenager Momo, these are all things that were fictitious and didn't really happen in real life. These were all things a villain would do, and villains don't actually exist and target people.
Okay, so here's where you lose me. Now, you can say, I didn't understand the impact of them, right? Because there's plenty of people who do not understand the impact of terrible things because they've never experienced them. That's why there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. Real quick, as far as I'm aware, the more extreme pieces were tagged as mature content, but there may have been some exceptions or missed, but I vaguely recall that being a thing. Okay. The thing is, because, and here's the main reason why I can't overlook this. If you were in any way in a church, if you, even basic Sunday school lessons, you know these things exist. Everything she listed, with the exception of maybe grooming, is in the Bible. Every single thing. villains exist. One of the things about the Bible is to point out that human evil does in fact exist. So her saying that she wasn't aware that those things were real is just baffling to me. It just really is.
I didn't know any better than this. I had a very censored version of childhood, and finally feeling like I was getting older and allowed to see the things behind censorship felt like a big step for me. But I don't think it was fair to me that this was how I learned about some of these concepts. Especially because I did follow Dolly Guts' private account at one point, and they did post pictures that I...
Okay, that is true. It is not fair to her, because her parents should have done that job instead. However, I don't think it's inherently fair to put that on Dolly Guts. Let's see here. I don't think it was appropriate for me to have seen such things, but do understand the nuances of self-harm right now better and how fragile mental state can affect rational thinking. I wish Tirza had gotten the help they needed sooner. Here is the thing. Unless, when you first started looking into it and you got inundated with this, if you fell in love with this, unless Tirza met you on day one and pulled you into this community herself, that's not inherently her fault. You can't say, well, she did this, when at this point she probably didn't even know you existed. And I could be wrong on that. You know, Tirza, you can comment, and Chimerama, you can comment. We can figure this out. So that's where I'm breaking here a little bit in terms of that.
really didn't want to see, but I was so enamored with their work that I looked past it and kept consuming their concepts and art that I don't think I even realized the extent of an impression it was leaving on me. I should explain that I did have other friends at this time who were trying to tell me that Dolly Guts as a person wasn't that great, and that I really should distance myself.
Okay, but you're talking right now about consuming her art. Whether she's a decent person or not would only matter if you wanted to interact with her as a person. Thank you, Zigzags, for the $5. So glad to catch another stream. Hope you're doing well, Lyle. Well enough. It's just... a lot of this seems to be being put on Tirza as though Tirza took her by the hand and guided her through this. And I it's been years since I've watched those videos. I probably should have before the stream, but I don't recall that being the case.
Though I didn't, because I really wanted to keep seeing their art and prioritize that over anything else. That and things weren't really being explained to me the best at the time, and I had a hard time grasping that bad people do exist because I had never seen it for myself. Again, my empathy wasn't the broadest at this time in my life.
Well, empathy has nothing to do with knowing bad people exist. Even people who are clinically, and I'm not using this as a derogatory, but people who are who suffer with psychopathy, who struggle with empathy, like genuinely, like from a chemical level, they're fully aware that bad people exist. I have somebody in my server that that has that condition, and that person fully well aware knows that horrible people exist. So that's what I don't understand.
Eventually, I experienced the phenomenon of my character's design being taken and sold as an adoptable by Tirza themselves, and I should also reiterate that I did ignore this for a while. I didn't really think much of it because while I thought they looked similar, I didn't jump to conclusions because they were my idol. I drew fan art for their main OC and even drew that character with Kira a few times. However, this kind of thinking did change, and I do think it was because I decided to look into the things my friends were telling me, and that's how I found the Kiwi Farm forums on them and their actions. Reading through it, it almost felt like a line had been severed. I finally saw what people were claiming them to have done, and I was genuinely really upset about it. That's when I distanced myself and blocked them and tried to move on. It was at this time that my best friend, that I mentioned earlier, pointed out the similarities between Kira and the adoptable they made, and that was when my initial anger came up. Though I still waited to make my video because I didn't want to escalate things any further, and I was still really upset. Though I was still upset when I made my videos too, but I was a teenager and didn't have the maturity I do now. Come May of 2020, and I make and post my first video. It may have been earlier than this, but the only evidence I have for dates is the Kiwi Farms when looking it up as...
Okay, that means she was 19 if she's, what, 23, 24 now? So she says I was a teenager, but she was still an adult. I'm just trying to make sure I understand this completely, because what I have learned sometimes is people who are teenagers, when they get caught doing something that they realistically, and I do know for a fact that she was told this was a bad idea, that Ponder literally sat her down and said, your videos are bad, take them down, here's why they're bad. Acting like, well, I was just a dumb kid and nobody ever sat down and explained, but they were. They were explaining this, and we'll get into that a little bit later on.
My video was removed, and I don't have the original files anymore. It was received fairly well at first, and I had a lot of people supporting me, but then a creator by the name of Ponder Sprocket came out with her own videos defending Tirza and absolutely tore into me by being extremely condescending and calling me stupid.
Here's the thing. I don't know if I should read the messages now, or if I should wait till the end, because I don't want to call Auroradite / Chimerama a liar, because I don't know if she's just misremembering, but she was given a year. She reached out to Ponder, asking Ponder to cover Tirza, and Ponder responded, pointing out your video is bad. If I cover Tirza, I'll have to cover you too. I recommend you remove the video. And for a year, Ponder gave her grace. Her response was to make more videos and double down. So this wasn't Ponder just saying, no, let's see if I can do the right voice. Let's have a little fun in chat. 1 if you want Cobra Commander, 2 if you want Mum-Ra. Oh, goodness. I probably should have thought this through a little better. I'm seeing more 2s than 1, so Ponder didn't just turn around and go, "You ridiculous child! I will make a video on you, and all through earth shall see that I am the mighty one." So that's not what she did. That's not what she did. And let's assume she was a little condescending. Let's assume she did call you dumb. Sometimes you call a spade a spade. Ponder says, I said that the videos were inappropriate and the Chimerama should have focused on not only their personal on only their personal experiences, not things they weren't present for and couldn't prove. Yes, which is a valid thing. And we will get into those because I do have those messages. Ponder, thankfully, has given me the clearance to read them. So we'll get into that a little later. But I just can't. I just can't.
Should add to this that I do feel like I brought Ponder into the situation myself, as I was a huge fan before and watched her a lot, and a lot of other art drama commentators at the time. When I first released my video, I sent it to her in hopes she'd help share it. I don't have the screenshots, but I do recall her saying she wouldn't share my video, that I should take it down because it was stupid, and that if she were to make a video, it would be on me and not Tirza. I was upset, and I blocked her, and I didn't watch her videos at all after that.
Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a little bit of inside baseball, right? A little bit of inside baseball. A little bit of the LioConvoy lore. All right, so 2019. Grizzly the Medic was outed by our group for being a child predator, as well as a security officer at BronyCon. And BronyCon didn't want to acknowledge any of it. I threw a fit and made a mule of myself in their Discord server. And I went and told Ponder about that. And I thought I was in the right. Ponder's response was essentially, you made a mule of yourself here. This is the dumbest way to do this. And at first, I typed out like 2 or 3 paragraphs about how I'm totally in the right. I didn't do anything wrong. And then I took a moment and I thought it through. I'm like, you know what? Actually, Ponder's right. That was really stupid. I really could have done a better job on that situation. I look like a lunatic in that. There's nothing wrong with somebody giving you negative feedback, critique about what you've done, and you taking out from that the diamond that's in that. I don't believe Ponder called her stupid. I will refer to the DMs later, or the emails. LOL first chance when Lau was chewing about in DMs. Actually, I don't think that was our first one, but it was close to it. You can say, all right, maybe I need to look at this a different way. Maybe, I shouldn't do this, but not instead just, well, Ponder didn't back me immediately and said she was going to totes make a video on me, but, I'm going to block you and all your videos now. You've upset me for not doing what I want you to do. And I just got to put this out there. I just got to. Please stop running to creators to make a video on something that you have involved yourself in. Just please don't. I just dealt with somebody who a year ago came to me about something, and because of their actions, I cannot cover it now. It's just, you can't expect content creators to get involved with something you're emotionally or personally invested in. And here's the thing, you can't expect them to always validate you either, right? There are things in my chat I will validate. I'll validate the vulnerability. I'll validate the kindness, stuff like that. I won't validate Ninja Turtles' next mutation. But expecting a content creator to validate you at all times or your opinion is just not realistic. And it's also extremely parasocial. So just please don't do that. All right, continuing.
So, in a way, I feel I did involve her, but she said she wouldn't have made any videos. I feel that the only reason she did it was because of spite. I said...
What do you mean you feel you involved her? She didn't... Ponder, can you correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think you even knew this was a thing until she literally came into your email. It made it out of spite. She gave you a year to get your head on straight. A year. God.
That I was going to keep my videos up even though she told me to remove them, and so I think she made the videos the way she did on purpose because she had a personal vendetta against me after that.
Well, I mean, she did make the videos the way she did on purpose. That's how all content creators do. Sometimes things happen that we're not aware of, or people are going to take our words the wrong way. Lord knows it's happened with me several times. In fact, while I have all your attention, please stop calling Gilded Poo a zoophile if you are. We don't have evidence that he is one. Yeah, plenty of reasons you don't have to like him, but like let's not consider that. If Ponder was going to make a video out of spite, it would have been meaner. Ponder says, wait, so it was bad to make a video on her when I knew nothing about her, but she can just assume I made the videos out of spite without knowing anything about me. By the way, Ponder, if you ever want on, just let me know and I'll pull you in. This is goofy. It's goofy. Goofy. I made the videos because I said I was going to cover the topic. I was going to cover her video, which makes sense because it's a point of reference. Hi, guys. I'm here to talk about this episode of Thundercats. I'm not going to bring up the episode at all. Not going to mention it. We're going to talk about it without discussing it. That you can't do that!
I will say that my feelings and opinions on how she sees me are all speculated and not able to be proven in any way, but I do think it's important to mention how all of that made me feel. The first video, which is 2 hours long, was released on December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. There were a few months where I felt like things were going great, but after that happened, I was basically chased off the internet by both Tears' community and Ponder's community. I had a lot of my so-called friends cut me off and never speak to me again.
Okay. So, Ponder has shared this with me. Tirza was given heads up that this video was being made because Ponder wanted to do them that decency because this person has anxiety. So I did this out of spite, but also that's all speculation. Cool. I hate it when people make claims without, like, qualifying. See? Chimerama was given a heads up. Exactly. That's my point. And the whole 2 days before Christmas. Here's the other thing, right? People can only run you off if you give in to that. I've done some bad things. We're all aware of it. Not going to repeat them. People have been trying to run me off. I'm still here. It's a choice. You can either choose to stay and improve and point out that those people are wrong, or you can keep running and then you get to a point to where you just feel like you got to talk about it and unfortunately not be as honest as you probably should be. It's just... like some of the other people in chat, I was hoping this would be a, here's my accountability, I've grown, I'm sorry, but that's not what this is. It just isn't.
When I did finally manage to watch the videos, I saw some of them commenting on how they knew me and how they appreciated Ponder for speaking out against me. I had never been betrayed like that. I was so incredibly hurt, and I still struggle with trusting my friends as being permanent to this day.
I mean, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I'm the same way.
The harassment, I left the accounts linked to usernames Chimerama and Vampiric Doll, as those were the screen names everyone knew me by, and the only people who knew my accounts after were a very slim amount of people. I think I only talked to maybe 5 or 6 of the original people who knew me at that time, and even now, I run into people online who knew me or of that situation, and it's caused a lot of fear. I felt if people knew who I was, I wouldn't be able to make friends anymore. At one point, I did come forward with being the person...
Well, I mean, that is a genuine concern to have, and with the way the internet tends to react to things, I can understand having that fear. So that's a valid feeling to have.
who made the videos on Tirza, and I apologize to them too, though I will be completely honest and say, while I did decide to say sorry out of my own free will, it felt like I had to apologize to get the harassment to stop, because even on my new accounts, people would find me and try to start up conflict again. But even then, seeing people...
Well, the thing is, that's not inherently Tirza or Ponder's fault. Look. I've apologized to Rosa twice. I apologized to her the day after that all happened, going through Asuka, because I was blocked and everything else. And then I apologized more recently. If the rest of the world doesn't forgive me or keeps bringing that up, they can do that. I've done what I feel is right, and the apology is genuine. If you're saying that you didn't mean it, that's an internal problem, because you're essentially saying here that by context of what you're admitting, that you were apologizing to get the harassment to stop, as though they could make that stop. A good example, Doodle clones. Jars never backs them. They still continue. The creator, who is the quote-unquote source of some of these people, can't make them stop. They just won't. Thank you, Goblin, for $10. Wish me a happy birthday, Lio. I am turning 21. Happy birthday. So, like, if your apology's not genuine, don't give it.
People who were cheering me on during that whole thing be disappointed and upset with me that I had made up with Tirza left me feeling incredibly guilty. I want to say that while I'm not holding grudges and I'm not trying to start conflict again, I don't think I should have apologized. And seeing as they accepted it and then called me disingenuous later on, I don't think they deserved one from me anyway.
Let's go back.
To start conflict with me that I had made up with Tirza left me feeling incredibly guilty. I want to say that while I'm not holding grudges and I'm not trying to start conflict again, I don't think I should have apologized. And seeing as they accepted it and then...
Don't do this to me. I'm old.
I think they deserve...
I don't know how to do... How do I do this? Let me see here. Is it control? Is it shift? It is not shift. Shoot, how do I get this to go frame by frame? Because God, it's only up there for a single frame.
I think they deserved one to stop, because even on my new accounts, people would find me and try to start up conflict again. But even then, seeing people who were cheering me on during that whole thing be disappointed and upset with me that I had made up with Tirza left me feeling incredibly guilty. I want to say that while...
Sorry you guys have to suffer through this, but God.
I'm not trying...
Use the comma and period keys? What are those again? Oh my God, you are a lifesaver. Thank you, Caitlin. And then Dream Snatcher. Old man Liar was at it again. Oh, thank God. No worries. Thank you for the apology. I'm not harboring anything negative, which she saved on the same day. And then later on, so we have this. We don't know what day this was. And then September 20th, 2022, so 2 years later, your apology was totally disingenuous, really disappointing. I hate crop screenshots like this. I want the rest. I want the rest. I want to see the conversation.
Called me disingenuous later on. I don't think they deserved one from me anyway. As much as I'm sure people want to deny it, I was a victim of having very gross things normalized and delivered to me on a cutesy platter to make it less grotesque and easier to consume.
If this person didn't know you personally, you can't blame them for the things you see. They should probably change their tags. I can't rhyme the rest of this, but unless she was your friend, it's not her fault.
I got into the whole mess because of cross-tagging. I was looking for dolls on Instagram. I didn't expect to be met with all of that.
Okay, so when I was closer to the age she was, when this happened, in the Paleolithic, when we were hunting mammoths, I was getting back into Ninja Turtles. This is when the 2003 cartoon came out. And I was curious about the character Slash. I looked up TMNT Slash. Mistakes were made. I saw things I didn't wanna. So you know what I did? Clicked the close and back button and found the things I was looking for. That's what I did. And realistically, it's what you should have done. Now, if she did not tag her things appropriately, that is on her. But you can't say that she led you into this unless you guys were like friends or something.
All of this, I had to start learning to think for myself, but as you can see with my explanation of the apology and how I felt guilty afterwards for a multitude of reasons, I didn't know what that exactly looked like. I didn't know what to do, what to think, how to go about things. I was 20. That's true, but 18...
You know, I'm not going to dunk on them too much for the whole I didn't know how to go about things, because I've screwed up in my late 30s. God. And 2 of the times I had Ponder there slapping me on it, Lord. But at the same time, you're at the age now where you should be able to reflect on this and recognize that you've done wrong. So this feels more like a video that's put out there to defend yourself instead of to take accountability.
19, 20-year-olds don't mature instantaneously when they turn a year older. I'm still growing and learning now, and I'm turning 24 in August. My brain isn't fully developed yet. I don't think it was fair to me to have been the target of a woman in her mid to late 20s when I was still a teenager when I released my initial video.
Target? Okay. Thank you, Ponder. If I need to be slapped, I have no problem with it. I'll take it. You'll need a step stool, though. If I am sitting in my house reading a book and some dude wearing all black with a sword kicks my door in and starts threatening me, and I cut his head off in a duel. Actually, not head. Let's say I cut his arm off. And his immediate thing is to drop down like, man, why'd you attack me? Don't you know I'm younger than you? I'm a kid. My response would be, these hands are rated E for everyone. If you're attacking this person on a larger public platform, which, I say larger public because I mean YouTube, because that's where you did this, you're not owed their silence. The cross-tagging also isn't Tears' fault, because Tears was around the same age. There is a gap there, apparently, but at the same time, it's just, why did you hit me back when I hit you? What logic is that? Like, here's the thing. I've had plenty of people who have taken shots at me on YouTube or whatever that I don't respond to because, number one, I'd be at it all the time. And 2, they're also not worth my time. But if I did respond to them, I'd be well within my right to, because that's me and I have that right. You cannot expect somebody else to not respond when you've done something like that. You can't.
Of course, I wouldn't have been mature. Not only was I raised sheltered and also still technically a teenager, there was another factor that played into that. Again, I'll explain later. After all of that, I went into therapy. I was getting help with processing what had happened, and at first there was a lot of self-blame and internalized hatred for everything I did.
You also know that Tears had a lot of problems too, which is why their art was so problematic. So, you want people to give you mercy for your struggles growing up. I understand. Fine. That makes perfect sense. I will absolutely grant you that. There's a verse in the Bible that people often take out of context or they misquote unintentionally or intentionally. Judge not lest ye be judged. The purpose of that verse is not to say don't judge people or don't judge things, because we have to by nature. Even non-theological people have to judge things. They never finish the rest of the verse. Because by whatever measure you judge, you will be judged in the same manner. You cannot expect people to show you that kindness for your struggles while you don't show Tirza that same kindness. It's actually told through a parable Jesus said once too, about a man who had his debts forgiven by somebody, and then somebody he knew owed him a much, much lower debt, and he refused to forgive it. And that person was condemned for this. So it's a problem, and you've got to be consistent. You've got to. By that logic, you have to be nice to me because I was raised by a narcissist and I was punished for pointing out when someone was lying, so me doing it online is reclaiming that power after years. I mean, I do. And I'm nice to you. Because trust me, I get it. Mentally, I think people and teenagers till 24, 25, but that's because the brain stops growing, but Chimerama can still be held responsible for actions. I don't inherently disagree. While the brain continues to develop until then, like there's still responsibilities and whatnot that people can and should take, right? They're still adults.
And I did that a lot for every situation, if I'm being completely honest, but especially for this one. I watched the videos through with my therapist at the time, and it did help to have her there and watching them bit by bit, but I don't think I really had the capacity at the time to think for myself still, and I was just listening and taking what people said about me as truth. It's hard healing from that and becoming more confident in myself and my beliefs. After that, I just kind of left it alone, and I've rebranded a few times. It was less about running at that point and more just finding something that resonated with me again. Vampire
And that's valid. That's fine.
Doll was a hard hitter. It was something I clung to for years before I switched from Chimerama to Fairy Coffin to whatever else after. Nothing felt like it stuck and felt like me, so...
Okay, so you blame her for getting you into this stuff, but then you held on for a long time. These similar things like Fairy Coffin, like that's the cutesy mixed with the morbid. But yeah, I get it.
I switched through a lot of different names before I settled on Aurora Deity. The harassment halted as soon as everyone moved on from all of that, so...
You should have called yourself Thrakwazar. It's a cool name.
I haven't dealt with much harassment in that area anymore. I do think it's important to...
Well, I don't think Chimerama here should really be harassed. Even here where I'm like contradicting them and pointing out their inconsistencies, I don't want anyone to go harass her. Like if it's a child predator or an actual scumbag, I don't care. Gotta be completely honest about that. If people are mean to them in the comment sections within reason, but like not for this. This could have all been avoided if a certain somebody did what was recommended. Sorry for the change in tone plus volume. This was recorded hours later when it was very late for me and I was trying to keep quiet so people could sleep. I also thought I was recording for 30 minutes before this and I ended up not actually pushing record, so I was very tired. Oh god, I have so been there. Harassers are childish pieces of crap. No, because children are smarter than that. Harassers are akin to a group of chickens that recognize when one of their own is sick. And if you ever see that, it is brutal.
Say that while I know some of you will not be happy with how I speak about these creators, this is not me trying to throw them under the bus or shit on them in any way. These were my personal experiences, and I have a right to have my negative thoughts on them. You don't have to change your mind about them just because I don't like them. This is entirely just me telling my story and my perspective. I just ask for everyone who is involved to be left alone. I don't want conflict, I don't want drama, I just don't want people seeing me as someone who had it out for Dolly Guts. I was personally hurt by what they did, not just to me, but to other people, and wanted to try and help others avoid what I and other victims...
Okay. There is nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with trying to help other people, especially with things you've struggled with. Like, I had to put this out there, unfortunately, because it got leaked by a certain cuck warfox. One of the reasons why I did predator hunting, as foolish as maybe the ways I conducted it and as abhorrently as I spoke to some of the victims there, is because of things I went through when I was younger. You can make bad decisions in that mindset. You can make irrational ones in that mindset. What I have learned instead, that is the wiser option, is trying to walk them through it, putting them in a community that will show them kindness and support, and trying to teach them there's ways past that. And on top of that, the best advocate you will ever have is yourself. You have to let people make that decision. You have to let them push that themselves. And it's just... You also run the risk, and I've, as the past 2 years have proven, you've also run the risk of people just using you as a cudgel, as a weapon, when you do things for them. Ponder says, so Dolly Guts doing things that hurt others as a result of their mental health and abuse is bad and deserves to be addressed, but not someone saying hurtful, untrue things about Dolly Guts because of mental health and upbringing and abuse. Rules for thee, but not for me. Alright, so. That is true, Ponder. It's inconsistent.
...had faced. That didn't mean I wanted people to go and harass them, though. I never condoned canceling or sending them threats. I just wanted people to be careful, especially kids who were like me and just saw the aesthetic appeal and went in without knowing better.
Okay, I never saw these videos. I've only seen Ponder's, but here's the problem when it comes to warning, like, the children. And Ponder can verify this better than I can. If she put up the very things that the children should not be seeing in the videos where she's telling children to avoid it, you're the problem as well. There are better ways to educate, I think.
I do confess that I wasn't ready to tackle that, nor did I do it well. I was very emotionally driven at the time, and I think with that in my way, I wasn't able to...
Ponder says, okay, but neither did I. Correct. I just didn't want people going after a mentally ill abuse victim for venting through art. Also a valid take, and I understand that was the point of your video.
Word myself how I wanted to. I didn't speak in a cohesive and collected manner, and so I think a lot of what I was trying to say got...
Ponder, you sure you don't want on? Because I can bring you on. It's okay. It's not a problem. I can just make a watch together room. We can be good on it.
Garbled, and so that was easily picked apart by people and turned into something aggressive. It was never supposed to be aggressive. It was supposed to be a warning. But while I could admit that
I mean, you don't have to. I'm just letting you know that you can. Please don't choke me. I don't want to die today. Maybe tomorrow, but not today. Make sure it's after I watch Wolverine and Deadpool. Let me get this room together. And we're at 1913. Yes, you hear the Gidgey. You will always hear the
if you
Gidge.
decide to stick around.
Away. Stupid ads. Re. $19. 11's good enough. Yes, you hear the Gidget. I'll tell you what. Type in G if you want me to let Gidget in. And I don't have a group chat here. It's just I'll just call you. How do I? Oh, that's how I copy. Huzzah. Hello.
I apologize if my quality is not that great. I'm on the phone.
It's all good. I don't know if the watch together is going to work for you, but we'll take a shot at it.
I also apologize. I don't watch my old content. Like, as soon as like a month has passed, I'm just like, I can never look at that again.
Right?
So most is just gonna be like whatever I can sort of parse together from my fragmented memory. There are like certain things where I'm like, yeah, I remember that like really, really, really vividly, and other things it's just like, whoop.
Well, the chat has now gotten their way. Gidgey has been let in.
The Reign Supreme.
Yes, the Gidgey.
My Agent of Darkness has entered.
So, Ponder is claiming that Gidget is their Agent of Darkness because Ponder has threatened to steal socks, and that's what Gidget likes to do. She likes to steal socks and bring them to me. Isn't that right, Gidget? Okay, so let's see here. Let me know when you join the room.
There's a room? Where's the room?
I sent you the link to the Watch Together.
I am joining Watch Together. Join the room. Okay. I think I'm in.
Alright, so we're going to see if
Packer
this
voice.
works.
I'm in.
Supposed to be a warning.
Can you hear that?
But while I could admit that I shouldn't have done it in the way that I did or tried to evade accountability
Oh, and let me know if you want me to pause it, because I know you're on the phone.
after
I
the
think
fact,
I can pause it.
I still
Okay.
do not have the greatest opinions of Tirza or Ponder, but that
That's
is
fine.
wholly my opinion, and I think I am justified to have those.
Yep.
That's not to say I was the only one suffering.
Well, you know, she's justified in having the opinion, but I feel that her... And I'm trying not to be mean here, but I don't think her opinion's based in reality.
Well, realistically speaking, everybody's reality is a little like I've told you about a very particular person in my life that I refer to as Captain and how Captain likes to craft their own reality. Everybody's reality is going to be slightly different because everybody's, the hero of their own story. Nobody really likes to consider themselves the villain. And sometimes we make excuses for, we make justifications for things that we don't like. This is why you can have like people who are in, for example, abusive relationships where they're constantly not delegitimizing, they're downplaying the abuse that is being inflicted upon them because they don't want to consider themselves a victim. They don't
True.
want to consider a person that they love to be a bad person. We do shit like that all the time. So like it's not really a big deal. Nobody is objectively, not objectively, nobody is obligated to like me. Y'all can fucking hate me.
Well, I don't. And I don't think Gidget does either. Yes, Gidget, I'll pick you up. Come here, baby.
I wouldn't
Oh,
recommend it because hate is
caustic.
it's mentally exhausting. Yeah, it's mentally exhausting. I
And
don't
yet,
think that I could say that there's anyone that I hate, but there's one person who might be very close, but he's kind of pathetic, so I can't even be arsed with him.
I mean, hate's kind of powered me through most of my life. So I don't know if it's exhausting, in my opinion, but I need to find a better therapist. Anyways, moving on.
I find it exhausting because I don't have a lot of spoons.
True.
I am aware that both Tirza and Ponder are both people too and have lives outside of the internet.
Nah, not true.
I'm not sure about that first part. I'm thoroughly convinced that Ponder is a fae.
I understand that we all have traumatic experiences under our belts, and that can affect how we perceive things and people. But I do want to say that just because someone is a victim does not mean that everyone else's experiences should be ignored.
That's true, but that also has to go for these other people, and I don't feel that you're really doing that here, Aurora Dite. I don't really feel that, honestly.
If I could specify, I do remember in the original chats, I pointed out to Chimerama, Aurora Dite, whatever they prefer to go by, that I looked at Tirza's art and I got the vibe that Tirza was a victim and they were venting through their art, and I was really worried about that. Like, I understand victims can hurt other people who can then become victims, but I did also specify to Chimerama that she should make a redone version of the video that explicitly focused on her personal experiences because she was totally justified in talking about those.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the majority of my problems with the video came from the fact that she didn't limit herself to just her personal experiences, and she branched out into things that she didn't have proper evidence for and wasn't around to experience.
Which is rational and reasonable, and there's nothing wrong with that. All right, so
I mean, apparently there is.
Well, there's not, but she took it personally. But let's continue.
I can admit that I did this too during all of that. I wasn't thinking like Tirza was a person, and a part of that is because I was so young and so hurt. But I was young and hurt, and still am of the belief that the way all of that was handled was very poor on every side. Both Tirza and Ponder are older than me, and it's left a lot of scars for me to have to heal from. I think that all of these things can coexist and still be true. I guess with my opinions on that being complete, I can move on to what I've been doing since 2020. It's been about 4 years now, so
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, and I was talking to you about this, as I mentioned in the stream earlier, that, like, just looking at how some things are handled now, I can see that some things maybe not as constructive as, like, even in my own content, as I would hope it would be. Granted, I tend to deal with, like, the worst of humanity, but I still could have handled a lot of things better, to be 100. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's just a sign of growth. If you looked back on the shit that you did like 5 years ago and you were like, yeah, I didn't make a single mistake back then, that's a fucking problem. You should be looking back on the stuff that you've done in the past and recognizing the faults with it, because nobody's fucking perfect. That's ridiculous to think. And if you think that you were perfect in the past, you got other things to address.
Yeah, and, I've been digging through some of the old calls. I was looking for something. I can't remember what it was. But I found a call where, like, it was so innocuous. And I was just losing it on this person. I wasn't, like, screaming slurs or anything, but I was just yelling and pissed. I'm just, now I'm like, what was I so mad about? This is completely unnecessary. I had no reason to be yelling at this person. This is so freaking stupid. Was I on pills? No, I am now, but still, it's just... What the world was I on? Alright, so we're going to be getting into some of the other stuff that she mentioned, and I'm going to keep a close ear on this one.
Let's talk about it. This next section is going heavily into a situation I wish I had gotten out of sooner. As traumatic as the video experience was, I don't think it tops this next subject. I'm going to be going into my last relationship, which I was in for about 3 years and 7 months, but before I do, I want to warn everyone watching that it was an abusive relationship. Everything happened online, but the things done, said, exchanged, and enabled was very unhealthy, immoral, and traumatizing. I'm going to be calling my ex Judas because of the...
What?
Yes?
Wait. In fairness, I was laying down. I was like half asleep. Wasn't like an earlier thing that like they didn't know about evil people, or that like evil people existed? But huh? What? Judas? The evil person from the Bible?
Well, I mean, biblically, yeah, evil, but I find Judas is more, like, horrifically misguided. But the thing is, like, the point is still there. I didn't know these people were real. I didn't know this existed. Anyways, I called this guy Judas.
like to give the benefit of the doubt, maybe you could make the argument of, like, Chimerama didn't know that people like this existed in real life. She thought that they were, like, fictional representations of real evil, and like actual people weren't like that. You could probably make that distinction, but that's a little confusing without that distinction. That sounds contradictory. I don't want to make that claim specifically because it may be a misinterpretation. Like if she's not scripting, maybe she's just sort of like going off the cuff. That shit happens all the time.
Yeah, and it's just, I don't know. This is what I struggled with the whole video, and the voice message that I left you. It's just like, I can't understand how somebody can be raised in a church, cult or not, and not understand that evil people exist. It's kind of the whole thing. It's like, okay.
I mean,
go ahead.
Unless the teachings of the church was that like the one true solid evil is the devil, and that like other like human beings are just like flawed individuals that the devil tries to tempt into doing bad things, and that like evil people as a concept don't exist. But that inherently denotes that she's like now specifying that she's all like, yeah, this person specifically is evil, which is like, yeah, I guess that's growth question mark.
I have no idea. Let's see. Ooh, there we go. Well, even if we were to do that, even if we were to do the whole, well, they did this, they did that, it was the devil influenced them, that still points that the devil can influence people to do awful things, which means that villains still exist. So it's so bizarre to me. But let's continue.
Evil Bible figure.
Yeah,
LOL.
but like a villain existing is not necessarily the same thing as like a person being evil. That could just be, the devil has influenced them into doing bad things. And if Chimerama is coming from the perspective of like she was influenced into bad spaces by other people, that would make sense, because obviously she doesn't want to view herself as a bad person for engaging in those things. She was just influenced by evil, and maybe like that's where it comes from now, because she understands like the concept of like the devil can influence people into doing bad things. She was influenced by a person into doing bad things, therefore that person is evil, much akin to maybe not akin to the devil, but like in a similar fashion.
Yeah, and she literally just said the evil person from the Bible.
That too. Yeah, that's a big point.
But also because it was one of the many names he went by, and he wasn't using that the last time I spoke with him. He was the aforementioned best friend I had made in Tears' community. Throughout our relationship, he hopped from username to username, account to account, changed up his pronouns and gender frequently, and changed his names frequently. I put up all of the ones that I can remember.
Alright, so we have Wishing Hell, Ghost Luck, Ghosties, Bunny Soft, Kindergarten, Church Doll, Snuffkin, Snuff Films. Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. La Luna, Melikai, Garothica, Guro. That's supposed to be Gurothika, but whatever. Another
Are you
Gothica.
reading off people who give you money?
No, I'm reading off the names put on the screen here.
Oh, I can't see. It's like stayed paused for me, so I can't see any of
Yeah,
this. What the
these
hell?
these are the names this Judas went by afterwards. Goth imps,
Uh,
church coffins, narc imps, narcissus, Parker core, Cooprisk, Explosiverance,
the heck?
Lambsgans, Oliver, Ophelia, Nori, Noriaki, Johnny, Ash, Judas, Cooper, Coop, Will. What the heck?
Oh, that's interesting though, because Tirza also went by Ash, I believe, at some point.
Also, thank you, Angie, for the $2. I brought murder Judas. That's a reference I guess I don't get.
Does anybody else find it like a maybe not a red flag, but like a bloody orange flag, like a blood orange flag when somebody has like that many fucking usernames? Like I had, how
Yeah.
many did I have? I had Empty Brook, I had Infected Bite when Cheesy Art was a thing. I made Ponder Sprocket, and then more recently, some of my more recent socials have been Be Animated Octopus. That's like four since I was 14.
I've kind of just had LioConvoy since 1997.
Yeah, there you go. Somebody constantly jumping around on different accounts like that. It's either something really innocuous, like they're forgetful and they're constantly forgetting their passwords, which is like, that's fine, that's whatever. Or they're like hiding or running from something, which like it does make you question, okay, but what is that thing?
Good question. We're going to get into that.
That he would switch from up on the screen. This should have been a red flag, but I was very blinded by my affection for him, and he excused it as not knowing his identity and was trying to figure
Oh,
himself out. So
I'm glad he sees it as a red flag now.
Yeah. Concordia Harmony, $5. Thank you. Clearly, the evil person from the Bible is the fig tree Jesus cursed. I've known that feeling before.
I just kind of rolled with it. I met Judas in the Dolly Guts community back in late 2017. We were both still minors at the time, but he found me through an adoptable batch I released, and he had purchased one. I created a Discord server a little bit after that, and I remember him being one of the first few people to join and spend time in there. We hit it off pretty well, but his treatment of me in hindsight was very love-bomby. He'd talk about how he loved spending time with me, how much he loved my art, and how he favored it over everyone else's in the community, and this included Tirza themselves. He would send me good morning messages, good night messages, and want to spend time with me 24/7. And the most notable thing to list was, once he and I were closer, he vented to me a lot. This ranged from complaints about his living situation, the relationship he was in at the time, how he was still closeted to his parents and felt unsafe to tell them, to his self-harming behavior that he was trying to stay clean from. He was one of the first people that I genuinely became close with online and grew to care for him immensely. I didn't know the complexities of relationships or self-harm. All I knew was to try and comfort him throughout everything. The relationship he was in at the time was abusive and illegal, as he was a minor, and if I recall, this woman was in her mid-20s. I witnessed firsthand how she treated him, as she followed him everywhere, and that included my server. She had joined a call once to yell at him, and they both left immediately after that. I didn't know the full extent of their relationship, but I do know now.
Okay, not to at all downplay what Chimerama is going to talk about having experience, because I don't want to downplay her experiences,
Mm-hmm.
but she is detailing that this kid, this Judas character, this person, was victimized by an older individual. So that does sort of, again, play to the notion of hurt people hurt people. And if it's a notion of like, if you hurt someone, you deserve, like, that deserves to be acknowledged and corrected and called out. I don't see why that also wouldn't apply to Chimerama calling out Tirza, especially after having been warned about the signs in Tirza's artwork. And again, that's not to not call out like me for hurting Chimerama, because like if I had a hand, like if, well, not if, but I had a hand in that, and obviously that, like, she deserves to be able to talk about that. again, it goes back to like she should be able to talk about her experiences. That's totally valid. But like I don't understand why it's a bad thing for her to be called out in a way that is unproductive when she also did it to someone else, and she has experiences of someone else who was hurting her. It just seems like a big cycle of hurt, and at some point she's trying to like cut the chain and be all like, okay, but it's not allowed to apply here. That seems a little off.
It's double
Maybe that's just
standards.
me.
It's just double standards. I'll read the rest of the
But
super chats once we're done here. But go ahead, Ponder.
okay. I was just gonna say, like, again, it falls back to like everybody paints their own reality in a way that like makes them feel more comfortable. And if that makes not Tirza, sorry, if that makes Chimerama feel more comfortable, like I get it, especially if she's got anxiety. I have anxiety, and that made me like super isolated for like the end of high school leading up until like I'm literally only starting to come out of my shell a lot more nowadays because I'm getting sick and tired of the isolation.
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, we make our reality comfortable. That's what I've been doing wrong this whole time.
It's even making a reality a fucking nightmare.
It's like everything's on fire. The fire's on fire. All right, let's continue.
He admitted to me later that it was explicit at times. At one point, he did break up with her, and he instead came to me.
Oh, good for him.
He admitted to me very shortly after breaking up with her that he liked me, and I liked him back. We tried dating for a little bit, but admittedly this lasted very short because I still had some internal anti-LGBT to work through, and I was also peer pressured by my family, who were still religious, to not be with him.
Oh, was
My
he
memory
like
gets a little
trans?
foggy around this time.
I'm going to assume so, even though I don't think it
Trans
was.
or maybe non-binary?
Maybe. Maybe he was gay and they knew that, and that's why they didn't want her with him. I don't really know. She wasn't too specific
Well,
about that.
if he was gay, he probably wouldn't be with someone who's femme presenting, femme coded, femme identifying.
Okay.
But like if it was bi or pan or like demi, that'd be more understandable.
Isn't half gay still gay though?
Bi is not the same as gay. I'll fucking fight you.
I'll be wearing
all
greaves
like,
if I ever meet you.
bisexual is just chocolate vanilla swirl. It's pistachio. Fuck you.
All right, continuing.
As I remember us still being close, but at one point had distance between us because I was hanging around a different crowd of people, and I don't think he liked them. But nevertheless, we became close again when I started watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and he watched it too.
Based.
We both became extremely hyperfixated on it and bonded even more with talking about it. I want to say this was around mid to late 2019 and entering 2020, so this was after my distancing from that community and before I made my videos. I drew a lot of fan art, put myself in the fandom, and this is where things started to get really confusing for me.
Trigger warning for grooming and pedophilia.
I learned that Judas was dating someone else, and while I didn't argue with him about it, I learned that this person, who I will call Bird, was 16 at the time. Judas was 20. But he and I being so close, being in the same fandom, and surrounding ourselves with pro shippers, and my lack of ability to think for myself, I just kind of followed his lead and everything. I believed him when he said that a 4-year age gap isn't that bad, and used Giorno and Mista, which was one of his favorite ships at the time, as an excuse. I didn't see anything wrong with it at the time, but finally being out of that relationship, I find that, that was actually fucked. 16 and 20 might not seem like a huge age gap difference, but it is when you consider that a 16-year-old is still in school and a 20-year-old has been graduated for years at that point. There's definitely going to not only be a vast difference in maturity levels, but also a very clear power dynamic. But unfortunately, I didn't know.
What was that?
There's also a social difference because usually, like, I guess in fairness, it does depend on where. Because, like, here in Canada, the drinking age is 19. I know that over in America, it's 21. But, like, if a 16-year-old was dating a 20-year-old here, actually, that's probably not the best example because a 16-year-old and a 19-year-old can date here. But whatever, a 16-year-old and a 20-year-old, 16-year-olds can't drink, 20-year-olds can. 20-year-olds can do, like, they can get, like, legal licenses, they can drive. 16-year-olds are usually just getting like their learner's permit potentially. Like there's not only like a age and physical and mental difference, there's like a societal social difference and like the difference in expectations.
I also have to say I just hate the fact that we live in a society.
But we live in a society.
What
Clearly, y'all just need to follow me into the Fey realm. What could happen?
don't do that. It's a freaking trap.
Come with me, users. La 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 la.
Here's a good time to mention that Ponder likes building things out of bones.
You look, some people are into that. Some people find it cool.
Anyways, here's where I'm getting more what's the word? Not that I'm being detached, but like they're kind of losing me because it seems like every time they're in something, it's I didn't know better. I didn't know better. I was pushed to believe this. I was pushed to believe that. And you know, there's a lot of problems with pro shipper stuff that we just do not have the time to get into here. But I'm not going to pretend that fiction doesn't affect reality in some way. And anybody who says otherwise, that I'm not making the video games cause school shooting argument. I'm saying like there is a fundamental difference that fiction can make to reality. But like, go ahead.
I actually would like to bring up something with the pro shipper because one, I think with regards to pro shippers, it depends on like what kind of pro shipper community that you're in. Because I've recently come to understand that the umbrella of pro shipping is fucking enormous. It can be something like actively illegal, like I don't know, fucking incest, to shipping, fuck, what's a shipping characters who like don't have all of their limbs, like a character who's like anatomically, like a character who's had a limb chopped off and they have like a prosthetic, like that can technically fall under pro shipping. But one of the things I also take into consideration with pro shipping, because I don't tend to engage in fandom discourse, but I lurk. I do watch fandom discourse. And one of the things I have come to understand is that pro shipping is sometimes adopted as like a mentality or a stance by younger individuals to justify the ships that they have. Because I've seen people like when I was younger, I grew up in the not Has Been Hotel, what am I talking about? Fucking Oregon High School Host Club.
Oh
And if you
God!
know Oregon High School Host Club, you know the fucking twincest is wincest.
Everybody point at Ponder
Everybody
and
was
call her old.
everybody was fucking, oh, the Hitachi twins, they're so great. What if they kissed? That was the whole fucking thing. Everybody liked that. And then there were the people who shipped like Mori and Honey Senpai. And with Mori and Honey Senpai in particular, I look at that ship nowadays and I'm just like, those are just people who were projecting onto Honey Senpai and they were really attracted to Mori. Because like I've seen sort of similar more recent anime, if you've seen Cherry Magic. There's like a relationship in that where it literally looks like an adult version of Mori and Honey. And I was looking at that and I was like, I like 100% would have projected onto the shorter blonde one when I was a teenager. Because most shipping is like it's a character that you project onto and a character that you're attracted to. And I think that most people don't know that, which is why like you would see some pro shippers who are doing like Snape and Harry Potter or like Hermione and Harry Potter. And that's because they were projecting onto the teenage characters because they were teenagers and they were really fucking into Snape. So like I see that in some instances and I'm like, okay, I get it. I don't think that teenagers and like little kids should be lambasted for having these fantasies, having these ships. Like it's not really fair. Obviously, they're not going to understand why it's bad, and it's fine to engage in fantasy in that degree. It's like, you know, it's fantasy, it's whatever. But then you do have the fucking weirdos who then like, you know, they get into their late 20s, 30s, 40s, and they're still promoting the pro shipper. Oh, I should be allowed to ship this 40-year-old character with this teenage character. And I'm really torn on this because I don't think that kids should be forced to reveal themselves as kids or their age online because I think that puts a target on their back. But in also other situations, if like they're if it's going to be like fine for them to indulge in these fantasies, you kind of have to acknowledge when they're children. And then if we set up that precedent of like it's only okay for kids to do that, then we're going to have the fucking 40-year-old freaks pretending to be kids online so they can justify producing all of that content, and then they're going to get into those kids spaces, and it's just a
Yeah.
whole heap and hell of a loaf. What the fuck?
Yeah, sometimes there's just no simple answer. And as much as it's terrible to put a target saying, well, if we know they're kids, or if people know they're kids, that could be a target. At the same time, you have to
Yeah.
gatekeep those spaces. You have to. You just have
Yeah.
to hope the people who are in charge don't go, hey, everybody, look at this child. Look at this 12-year-old who's trying to join. Everybody point and laugh. He's like, no, we're just not going to let the person in our group. Why not? They smell bad. And just go about your life. I have a gidget in my
Well,
lap again.
you would like to think that, but unfortunately, you do get like the people who just don't consider it because sometimes you have people who or maybe they're not all there mentally, but they've got like a really popular group because maybe they did well. You know, you've got people like Tirza. Tirza had mental health issues, and Tirza became exceptionally popular. But it was through art that was like venting about their own personal traumatic experiences. Sometimes people just like they don't think about that until they're in the thick of it and they've experienced it. That is like inherently the problem with a lot of these things is that people learn through experiences. And if they haven't experienced something yet, they may not necessarily know the best way to react in those situations. And sometimes, even if they have had experiences, if they've been conditioned to react in a particular way, they may still not react in the best way. Like I mentioned in the chat, I was raised by a narcissist. I was punished whenever I pointed out that that narcissist was lying about things. So it became really difficult to point out when people were lying about things. So you can imagine why I turned to doing that shit on the internet.
Yeah, just making a correction in chat. Since Hive got something wrong.
Oh, what'd you get wrong?
Hive said that he had to delete a pro shipping thread in the server. It wasn't a pro shipping thread. It was a self shipping thread somebody made.
Oh, like shipping with a clone of yourself?
Shipping themselves with other characters, specifically Dragon Ball characters.
Oh, so self-insert shipping.
Yes.
Oh, that should be fucking I came up in a community where self-shipping was like the greatest fucking sin, and if you self-shipped, you were unoriginal and you were bad and you deserved to be taken down, blah blah blah. Nowadays, people are way more liberal with that type of shit, but you should be allowed to ship yourself with your favorite fucking characters.
Man, when I was a kid in freaking high school in the Paleolithic, I had a bandmate whose screen name I'm not going to bring up because they could probably still be found. And I'm like, why is your name that? It's like, oh, I write fan fiction about meeting and marrying people from NSYNC. And and keep in mind, I was young at the age. I'm just like, are you okay? You need somebody to talk to? It was so foreign to me, especially about real people. It's so weird to me. I hope that person.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Self-cessed is self-ex self. So yeah, it's like you shipping yourself with like an alternate reality version of yourself or a clone of yourself. It's like Deadpool screwing another Deadpool.
Deadpool bit on your mind this week?
I wonder why.
All right, continuing.
Know any better than follow the leader as I learned to do. At one point, I admitted to still liking him, and he told me he liked me back. He was still with Bird, though, and asked if I would be comfortable in a polyamorous relationship. I didn't know how to feel about it. I didn't know Bird. I've never really been in a poly relationship.
But you knew their age. Continuing.
But again, it goes back to like if they haven't experienced that before, and if they were isolated and sheltered for a good chunk of their life, and if they'd been in a situation where people are able to be all like, oh, but it's fine, it's okay, they may have been able to justify it in their minds is the thing. Because you can, like I said, 16-year-old and 19-year-old in Canada is totally fucking fine. So if Bird was 16 and Chimerama was, I'm assuming 19, she could have been 20 at the time, but she doesn't specify her age. I'm going to assume that she was maybe 19. maybe 18 actually, then like for her that wouldn't be bad. It would more so be a matter of like Judas and Bird.
Well, we also, maybe it's expanded upon a little bit here. While this person may have been in a polycule, maybe Chimerama didn't interact with them? I don't know. Let's find out.
I didn't know how it worked, but I still really did have feelings for him, so I said yes. I still regret it and feel disgusted about it to this day. Bird and I hardly interacted. He and I were friends at most, and we didn't really like each other.
Okay.
We both liked Judas. Both of us were hesitant about being in the relationship, but I think our affections for Judas blinded us from the rationality. I don't remember how long it went on. I want to say maybe...
They do call it a polycule, but I am not a polycule person. I know one person who has a polycule, and I am very confused by literally everything.
I was sort of under the impression that a polycule involved people like interacting with one another, maybe not necessarily all on the same intimate level, but like, you know, being aware of and interacting with one another. If like it's just one person dating two people who never interact, is that not just polyamory?
I don't know. I'm monogamous.
Oh, okay.
I look at Weef.
Maybe a month or two, but I just know I wasn't happy. I got jealous quickly because I wanted to be with Judas, but he was still with Bird too. So I just knew I wasn't going to get or stay happy. I left that relationship. I sent him a message explaining my feelings and told him I just didn't want to interfere, and I was under the impression that was that. But it didn't end there. In fact, he came back to me later and says that he broke up with Bird because he loved me more and wanted to be with me, and so we got back together, but as an exclusive couple. As disgusting as I feel about that entire thing, I do think it was fate playing a part. Me being with Judas and upsetting Bird is what shortly caused him to cut contact with Judas and find someone age-appropriate to be with.
Yay!
I know this because after I broke things off with Judas for good last year, I messaged Bird and apologized for my part and how inappropriate it was for me to enable that behavior, let alone partake in it. We've since made up and have bonded.
All right, so let me read this out. Hey, thanks for reaching out. I'm sure it took a lot to be able to do that. I appreciate it a lot, and while you were still a part of it, I want to let you know I do realize you were also a victim, and the one who my negative emotions should be largely aimed at is blank. Again, thanks for reaching out. It means a lot. Oh, no worries. I don't even think I have notifications on for Twitter. DMs because of the NFT bots that I doubt I would have seen anytime soon, and I totally understand why you did what you did. Honestly, I don't think I really hold it against you knowing the full context. To be honest, if I hated you for things you did while he was abusing you, I'd have to hate myself for the same things, because with him, I think we were pretty much in the same situation. Honestly, I forgive you. I'm doing a lot better now. I have a lovely boyfriend who's helped me do a lot of healing and a good group of friends, and I hope you've been doing well too. I hope you've been able to heal, and don't worry, it's not crossing a boundary at all. I'm very happy you decided to reach out. That's adorable.
Woohoo! We love personal growth.
Right?
Heavily over the shared experiences we endured by Judas's hands. We've become very good friends, and I'm so happy to see us both in age-appropriate and healthy relationships. But continuing from the point where Bird cut contact with Judas, at that point it was just him and I. There were a few instances in which friends would come and go, but it was all for the best in the long run. I'm glad no one else got as intertwined with him as I did. I wish I could go into every little detail about our relationship.
Go ahead.
When we get back to the videos that were made, thinking about this, I did remember something else. Because I was thinking about that note about Ponder Sprocket did it out of spite, and I was like, why the fuck did I go back to that video? I remembered somebody else came to me a year later and asked me to cover the Dolly Guts thing, and that was how I found out that the video was still up.
Oh, interesting. So you kind of forgot about it until you got poked on the shoulder again about it.
Oh, it was like ADHD brain, out of sight, out of mind. And then someone gave me a poke, and I was like, wait a minute, I've seen this before. Didn't they say they were going to take this down? Huh? Ha-ha?
Why didn't this kid get off my yard yet? All right. But yeah, that's frustrating.
Relationship for point A to point B, but my memories from that whole relationship are hard to pull together. I can recall things he'd say and do, but not in a very streamlined way. I'm still in therapy processing everything and unlearning the unhealthy behaviors he fostered in me. I can list off everything I can recall in this moment, but I doubt that was everything he ever did because I wasn't the only person who was with him at a few intervals. Judas was very, very codependent on me for a very long time. It started the day we became close. He'd message me every day, as I mentioned before, but it was very intense at times.
From this point forward, I'm heading you to more triggering content, so please take care of yourself. Don't continue for a sensitive talk of self-harm, sexual assault, or emotional abuse. So, if you guys are, I'll see you later.
My family liked to go out or liked to play board games together, so I would go do these things with them. However, every time I would do that and go back to Discord, there would be 50 plus messages from him asking where I was, that he needed me, that he was going to hurt himself, that he already hurt himself, that he really needed me to answer because I was his only friend, that I was the only one who could help.
That sounds familiar. That's awful.
Sorry, continue.
What a scummy person.
Him or stop him from doing anything drastic. One too many times, and I already felt a huge responsibility to keep him safe from himself. I didn't feel like I could leave him by himself. I was his only friend, after all. I just wanted him to stay safe, so I ended up spending a lot of time away from family, and when I eventually got my own laptop, I never left my room. During this time, he was using my love for him to keep me close. Way too close. He fostered codependency in me as around this time I too was going through some strain with my parents and siblings, and he made it seem like he was the only safe person to talk to about it. So as he clung to me, I clung to him, though I never threatened to hurt myself. He did. He convinced me that some of my family members were dangerous and predatory, and that I shouldn't spend as much time with them anymore, and along with that, he would find things to complain about with friends, and if he couldn't do that, to bully them until they were out of the picture. And in that way, he was isolating me. He was the only person I felt like I could ever talk to. I didn't trust my family. I didn't trust my friends because I was convinced they'd all leave me behind. He told me that he never would. Throughout the relationship, he started becoming less of someone I could help and became someone who controlled my every move. He didn't threaten self-harm or suicide anymore when I wasn't available to him, but he did get extremely angry and ignored me. He knew at this point that I was attached at the hip, that I looked to him for everything, and that he could use that against me. So whenever I did something or said something he didn't like, he'd punish me by giving me the silent treatment or convince me that I was in the wrong for leaving him behind. He blamed all of these behaviors on abandonment issues. He emotionally abused me, and as a result of that, I became extremely submissive to his demands, and I never left my room for the longest time. Something that I recall him saying at one point in a call was that he liked to look for or watch a particular genre of film that I will not detail aside from it was illegal, and you'd have to go into the dark web to find them.
And do you understand a little bit more about why I said what I did in DMs now, Ponder?
I don't like any of this.
I don't either, but that's... And based on his name, I'm guessing they were snuff films, which is awful and terrible, but it's better than the other alternative that immediately went to my mind, if you can even say there's a better to that. My question to Chimerama here is... I really hope you reported him to the police. Please tell me you did, because you had to have something. And if you need help figuring that out, I will help you report it.
He said she was dating him up until a year ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chimerama, if you haven't reported this guy and you've got any record of any of the shit that he said, I would really encourage you to do that.
And even if you don't have record, if you have, like, something we can use, we can find him and I can walk you through how to make a police report. I have no problem helping you do that. Like, you need to, because we already have evidence based on your, well, not evidence, but we have your story that this person, like, dated a minor and then this. So yeah, it's you really need to report him. So I'm willing to help.
And even if you don't have records of that, the minor might have records of it.
Also true. So, we'll discuss if you show up. Continuing.
I honestly don't know why this didn't scare me away, but I think I understand the phrase love is blind better now.
Yeah.
He would make OC pairings with me and write with me about them. The first ones we had were wholesome enough, but the more we made, the more outrageously disgusting they became.
I know, Momos.
Just as a forewarning that it gets really disturbing. At first, it was a nice, cute poly couple, then it was a young girl and an older mafia boss, then it was a nun with trauma with a demon who wanted to eat her soul and succeeded by the end of her life, by the way.
What?
Then it was a serial killer and rapist and his victim, which I initially and regrettably agreed to at one point, but felt so wrong by it later that I wanted it to change.
Okay, that one in particular, sadly, like I said, I've lurked in fandom spaces before. I've seen that one like a weird amount.
That's not even a red flag. That's a red runway with like LED lights and vuvuzelas going off. Like, holy crap.
Like, you'd say that, but then I've seen like girls being all like, "Oh my God, Eddie Gluskin, he's the hottest. I just want him to ravage me." And it's just like, I've seen Outlast. I know Eddie Gluskin. Are you okay? Do you need a hug?
I don't understand the reference, but I get the spirit of what you're talking about.
He is one of what, like, she just talked about a serial killer and rapist. That is what Eddie Gluskin is.
Okay, because I am from the ye old days, so I'm well aware of the old AOL or Yahoo groups of we want to talk positively and sexually about the Columbine shooters. So I know these people exist.
Yeah. There's a term for it. It escapes me in the moment, but like I know that that's a thing because I've seen it crop up in fandom like I said, like a bizarre amount. It's I think it's just like younger individuals are attracted to the danger offered by these characters, but it's appealing specifically because it is a fantasy and there is no real danger. Anything that happens in the fantasy is purely guided by whatever you want to happen. It's entirely under your own control. So like I get it to a degree, but like that is just like a bizarrely common thing.
Which is why Zack is attracted to Shao Kahn and Darkseid. I will bully the Zoomer even though he's not here. Alright, continuing.
It did, but not for the better, because the victim was immortal and could regrow limbs, but still feel pain, and she still endured the abuse from his character, but escaped and fell into the hands of another serial killer who kind of used her as a source of food, if you can piece together how that worked. All of these stories were highly romanticized and sexualized, and I know he got off to them because he told me he did. He liked the fact that he could roll.
Oh, sorry. As a story, coming from someone who, like, Chimerama did detail that Judas was technically victimized by an older individual, and like we have discussed the potential that may have colored Judas's ability to have like a healthy relationship. Again, not to downplay anything that Chimerama went through or to like be all like Judas is totally justified, Judas is a good person. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that does actually make sense as a story coming from someone who was victimized, because there is like a trend with victims where when they've been victimized once, they are like an easier target for the predators who are able to suss out the victim flags. Basically, like predators can see that in people, they look for it specifically, and they hone in on the individuals that are going to let them do what they want to them. That is inherently how victims end up being re-victimized. So as a story, that does make sense. It would make sense for someone who is victimized to end up becoming a victim of another person. I do sort of just question, because Chimerama did allude to the fact that like Judas was queer, and I did specify earlier that people's shipping is like it's one character that they project onto and one character that they're attracted to usually. In those sorts of situations, I do tend to question which character the person is projecting onto.
Yeah,
Because, like, was Judas projecting onto the victimizer, or was Judas projecting onto the victim?
pretty.
And I think only Chimerama would be able to answer that. Or Judas, I guess, but
Well, the
only if
thing
Judas
is,
knew
if
what
he
their mentality was.
if he's finding the actions in them of themselves hot, which are the actions of the serial killers, I think it's kind of obvious which one he was projecting onto.
No, no, that's a
Really,
misconception. Yeah,
really.
that is a misconception. Victims, people who project onto the victim part, can still see someone being victimized and be turned on by it because it is their own fantasy and they are in control of what is happening. And if Judas was the one crafting this story and making this happen, it is possible, it can't be denied that Judas may have been projecting onto the victim portion. I'm not saying that was the case, but since I don't know enough about this situation, I'm only going by what Chimerama has said. And based on what Chimerama has said, we know that Judas was a victim at some point. Technically speaking, both sides are possibilities.
All right. Also, a super chat, and we'll get to all of them by the end of this. Says the term you were thinking of was hybristophilia.
That wasn't actually the term I was thinking of, but that is another applicable term. I remembered the term I'm thinking of. It's I've forgotten it again. Oh, for fuck's sake! It starts with a D. Dubcon. That's it.
All right then. Well, let's continue.
Play literal sexual assault and a torture with me, and I just went along with it because he convinced me that these things were fine because it was all in fiction. None of it was real. These characters weren't real, and they never would be. Roleplay literal sexual assault and a torture with me, and I just went along with it because he convinced me that these things were fine because it was all in fiction. None of it was real. These characters weren't real, and they never would be. How could it be wrong if it's just in fiction?
Okay, based on this, I'm going to
Lesser degree
assume
thing
that
he did
Judas was the victimizer.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of figuring out.
stealing
Okay.
characters from people and tracing their art to claim as his own. He denied this for the entirety of our
It's not a drama in the art scene unless tracing's involved.
For real.
What was it I was saying in an old stream? It's like Batman getting ready to deal with the Joker. Don't worry, Commissioner. I have a Google Doc ready. We'll start with the tracing and move our way up to murder.
relationship, but by the end of everything, I knew the truth. He gaslit me into believing that the original artists were the ones stealing from him, not the other way around. I think a small part of me knew that it was fishy, but I was so attached to him at this point, I didn't want to say anything that would upset him, because if I did, he'd always blame me for it. There was a multitude of other disgusting things that he did in our relationship, but if I'm being so honest, writing about this is very hard for me to do, and reliving it isn't easy. Not only do I feel disgusted with myself for participating in such things, but I also get extremely anxious thinking about the fact he told me multiple times, but I constantly think about what would have happened if we did with the things he liked and he had me do online. Things were already bad with everything I explained above, but on my birthday of 2022, I was away from home and at an amusement park with my mother, father, and my brother. Surprisingly, he didn't say a word to me the entire day. If he did wish me a happy birthday, it was like 10 minutes before midnight. I knew things were changing, but I didn't know how intensely they were going to. He hardly messaged me anymore. He hardly interacted or tried to make an effort to spend time with me. I bought him Christmas gifts if I could afford it, and I also drew for his birthday every year. However, Christmas came along and I received nothing. Our anniversary came along and we spent maximum 2 hours together before he wanted to leave. On Valentine's Day, we made plans to celebrate together, and I ended up spending the entire day by myself and crying myself to sleep. I noticed a pattern throughout the ending of 2022 that he was growing so distant, and I found myself going stir-crazy and yearning and begging for his attention. I would try to talk to him about my feelings. I would try to communicate that I felt like I wasn't a priority anymore, and I would ask for some change in behavior. But every time I did, it would go one of two ways. He'd apologize, explain he's been busy with other friends and had a new job, but he would do better, which he never did. Or he'd get angry at me, telling me that I needed to be patient and that I was just jealous that he had friends now that he could hang out with. Which, by the way, I attempted to get to know these friends too, and he refused to let me meet them. Every time I was left in tears and went to bed crying. I developed a habit of self-harm when I was blamed because I internalized it so intensely. I never really knew if it was because I was punishing myself for being the way I was, or if I just wanted to feel something other than the emotional anguish I was enduring. I couldn't go to anyone else to talk about these things aside from my therapist, who I only saw once every 2 weeks. So I tried to talk to him about it, and he'd tell me that he didn't want me blaming him for my self-harm, but I never blamed him. Eventually, I reached my limit when he started speaking romantically about someone else on his Discord status, like I wouldn't see it. I remember vividly that evening. I walked to my sister's house, bawling my eyes out and explaining the situation, that I expected he was cheating on me, which was likely because he had done it once before to my knowledge. Who knows how many other times he did and I didn't know about it. I was told to break up with him, that he was stringing me along, and that I needed to be the one to end things because he wouldn't.
Base.
I ended up trying to spend the night on her couch because I didn't trust myself to be alone. I didn't sleep at all that night. I ended up having to call my best friend, who told me the same thing, and she stayed up with me the entire breakup conversation I had with Judas. He got angry at me at first, but with my friend sticking by me, I was able to stand my ground and tell him that I wasn't in the wrong for feeling the way I was. He backtracked really fast and apologized, though at this point it was too late. I had enough, and by the end of that conversation, things were over. I had told him I wanted to stay friends, but that was quickly rethought too, as my friend and I investigated the tracing he did and found that he was indeed stealing from other people. I cut him off, I blocked him, and I tried to move on. It's been a little over a year since I cut him off completely, and it's been one hell of a journey getting to this point, but I am doing better. I am healing.
Let me pause.
I wonder.
What do you wonder?
Because I remember someone bringing Chimerama on a different account to my attention. Because Chimerama accused someone... I don't remember what the fuck it was, but I remember it was Chimerama on one of their new accounts, and they accused someone of something. And I remember it being very... It may not have been tracing, it may have been like character theft. But I'm now starting to wonder if maybe this was attached to that.
It's possible. We all know character theft is the most egregious sin.
Well, for fuck's sake.
All right.
Yeah, but like I do remember that being a thing on Twitter.
Doesn't surprise me. Don't you love it when like somebody you did a one and done on is around and people just try to get you to go back and you're like, leave me alone? Speaking of leave me alone,
That's why I have like a 2 commentary limit. Generally speaking, I don't want to do more than 1 commentary on a person. That's usually specifically a rule focused on my channel, and a commentary, technically speaking, can be split between different videos. But the goal is to just not like... I've seen people, both in the SCC community and other communities, where they get like this one target and they hyper focus on that target, and they're just constantly pumping out videos on that target, and I did not want that to happen.
Yeah.
So I set like a 2 commentary max rule, where it's like I can do 1 commentary, and then if like a year later or a few years later they come back and they do something else that's really big and egregious, I can come out and be all like, okay, I've done a video on this, we're gonna see how they grew. I don't think I ever ended up getting to that point, but that was like a solid rule on my channel.
Makes sense. Also, less burnout for you. I will sometimes talk about people more than once. More often than not, it's one and done. But if they're really funny, like Smash Bandicoot or Brian Mullins, I can't help myself. I got some hilarious clips from Smash Bandicoot. I will take you to the toilet. We'll live in infamy.
Yeah, probably.
All right, so continuing.
Healing. I know better. I know how to think for myself, and I know who my real friends are. But it was so incredibly hard leaving, and especially having to relearn what was healthy and what wasn't. I still have nightmares with him in them, and I'm still actively trying to break the anxious attachment style he fostered and trying to become a better person. Being with someone for that long, I know it's going to take time, but I did something that was so hard for victims of abusive relationships to do, and even though I know I enabled and participated in really disgusting things, I know better now, and I've gone and apologized to the people I know I hurt in the...
What was that?
I was just saying that they shouldn't hold that against themselves. That is inherently the nature of victimhood, is like you deny your victimhood and you're just like, oh, but I participated, I helped, I enabled. Don't hold that against yourself. Don't do it. Don't do it. It doesn't
Yeah,
help you.
I'll agree.
Like, you want to be better, don't do that. It's not going to help you, I promise.
Yep.
Midst of all of that. So finally, I'm finally getting to the point of some of the things I mentioned much earlier in this video. Why I was obsessed with Tears' art, why concepts were hard to grab unless they were laid out in front of me, why I was stuck in a routine of living for so long, why I felt the need to follow other people's lead rather than making my own. Back in February, I was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, as well as generalized anxiety disorder and complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or CPTSD. All of these things combined, and being late to being diagnosed has been a huge eye-opener for myself. A lot of the behaviors displayed by me over the years all lead back to these things and really have made a huge difference in how I live day to day. Unfortunately, that also means that I struggle even more now with meltdowns, overstimulation, fixations, socializing, etc., because now I am hyper aware of these things. It's still a work in progress, but I'm trying to get back to a place that is comfortable and safe for me to be in. So I think that pretty much wraps up everything of what I was doing in the years I was gone. I took the full year I was apart from him to recover, relearning, and reconnecting with people who I had lost during that relationship, all of which were very happy to talk with me again. I've been a lot happier having the friends that I do now, and having a loving, healthy, and uplifting partner that encourages me every day and makes me feel so secure and safe. I also feel like my art has had a huge upgrade since 2020. Here's a side-by-side comparison.
That is good. That's awesome. Jit, stop messing with the trash bag. Come here. Fussy baby.
Of a piece I made back then next to now. That's awesome. Anyways, I'm so sorry for how heavy all of this got. It genuinely was very hard for me to write out and record and edit, and I'm sure even posting it, I'm going to be having a very anxious time, but I think I'm at a point where I feel confident enough to speak out on my feelings on that whole situation and come forward with my story on both the 2020 video and my relationship and where I am now. I'm not interested in conflict or starting up drama again. I guess I just want to be able to return to YouTube without feeling I'm avoiding talking about something that I never fully addressed honestly or misphrasing myself. Things have been very hard for me, and I'm hoping that coming out with my story and perspective, as well as going forward with optimism, that things will get better. I miss making videos, and I miss making content. I just was so afraid to tackle all of this because of how much there was to talk about, but I'm glad I took the time to explain everything. I'm doing better, and I hope everyone else is doing good too. I'm going to try to focus on things that I genuinely like for future videos. I'm avoiding anything and everything drama related for obvious reasons, so I'm probably going to focus on the things I genuinely have a passion for, like my characters, stories, and the exploration of such. If you listened to this entire video, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to my perspective and hearing my story. I know it's a lot to digest and a lot to unpack, but just know that I'm super appreciative of not only the people who watched through this entire video, but also the people who stuck by my side throughout all of this. So many of my peers didn't know what I was going through until after Judas was out of the picture, and ever since that has come out, I've only felt the bonds I had grow stronger and more secure, and I'm so grateful to have the friends that I do. I'm so happy to have friends like you, and I'm so excited to grow alongside you too. I'm going to wrap things up now. Again, thank you for watching. I'm sorry for the long wait on my end, and I'm sorry it was as heavy as it was. I know this kind of talk isn't easy to hear about either, so after this, please take some time to yourself. Drink water, step outside, make yourself food, or do whatever you need to. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and for the third time, thank you.
Alright, so that's the video, but what's interesting, I'm going to read this off. I'll go ahead and close the room since we don't need it anymore, Ponder. You can hop out if you want there. I'm going to read the description, because what some people pointed out is the comments are turned off. So the description says, I think I said everything I wanted to say in the video, but I'm open to answering questions if anyone has them. I will be very honest that I will be deleting comments that seem like they're instigating a fight, rage baiting, or being posted out of malice or hatred. So that might be why the comments are disabled. I have to care for my mental health still, and I have to for the rest of my life, so I'm going to be removing any that cause me any sort of anxiety or grief. I ask again, no one sends hate to anyone mentioned in the video. The reason Tirza and Ponder are name dropped are because the situation was made a public one and trying to address it. We'll go over that shortly.
Well,
Go ahead.
huh? What?
Yeah.
Wait. Like I may?
Well, they said the reason
What?
Tirza and Ponder are named that are because the situation was made a public one and trying to address it. So it seems to me like they're trying to say that you and Tirza made this public.
Okay, but one, her video was public.
Public.
Two,
Mm-hmm.
I talked to her in private DMs about this.
Yep.
But
Gidget, how? How? I move the thing you're standing on to get you away from the can, and you somehow find something new. You little gremlin.
yeah, like I make this public. I talked about a video that was public at the time. Yeah, technically, she removed the video before my video came out, but that was because I preemptively went to her in DMs and I was like, yeah, I'm going to be talking about this.
Yeah?
I specifically went to her to see if her opinion on the video had changed. That was why I did it, because I wanted to see if she still stood by what she was saying in the video. And when she was like, yeah, I stand by it, the video may not have been well put together, but I stand by it, I was like, okay, then I have to talk about it.
Catch the hands.
Like, her answering, yes, I stand by the video, was the catalyst to me confirming, okay, I'm going to be talking about this then.
Yep. They also say... we'll get to it, don't worry, because we're going to read the messages. The victim of my ex has been kept a secret for their safety, based. And as for my abuser, I don't know where he is now, what name he's using, or what spaces he's prowling. I just ask for everyone watching to please be careful and to please be very wary of people online. I had a very different idea of who I thought he was for the longest time, but by the time his true colors were being revealed, I was in too far and too deep to know any better than to stick by him. If you are struggling with an abusive relationship, have hope that you can and will escape someday. Based. If I was able to do so, you can too. Double based. And of course, hotlines for those that are necessary. But what I would like to do now, since this has been brought up multiple times that Ponder was being malicious, or Ponder was snarky, or this is all Ponder's fault.
Out of spite.
Out of spite! You're spiteful, Ponder! We'll go ahead and read this stuff out. Now, Ponder, do you want to read your parts, or do you want to read Chimerama's parts?
That depends. Are you gonna be rude when you read Chimerama's parts?
I will not be.
Okay, I can read my parts then. Let me go into the dumbs.
While I might disagree with some of the stuff that she's done, I'm not going to insult her needlessly.
Excellent. Good. The dumbs. Aha, I found them. Okay.
And before somebody in chat asks, no, this isn't a time I need to put on a voice, so let's not. Because I know some people want me to. Just in general. Preemptively. Hi there, Ponder. My name is Meg, and I'm contacting you under the assumption that you'll look into this issue that has been glossed over for a few years. I made a video on the topic myself, but I am not very talented in the ways of editing or organizing videos like these. There is an artist by the name of Tirza / Dolly Guts that has done some very problematic things, and even though they claim to have apologized, the people they have harassed have said otherwise. They have a very large fan base filled with children, and the kind of content they make influences them in a negative light. I've been involved with them before, which I talk about in my video here, link. I did a lot of things during that time that I regret, and I think anyone else who followed them blindly in the past feel the same, but I don't have the courage to speak up about it. These are accusations and screenshots provided... Hold on. Gidget! There are accusations and screenshots provided in the description as well. I'm sorry to bother you, as I'm sure you're busy with a lot of other things, but this artist has traumatized me with the way they treated me and my friends, and it's very important to me that the issue is addressed. If you have any personal questions about them, please shoot me a note. So, I watched Chimerama's video, and I responded.
I'm sorry, but as I stated in the journal on my profile page, I've been experiencing the signs of burnout and have been struggling with my mental health. And so, after I am finished with the next 2 projects that I am already working on, I will be taking a very long break. I will not be taking on any projects upon request. I make no guarantee for any videos to be made for quite a while. Additionally, I do not do expose videos, which is what it sounds like you want me to do. My videos are only in response to public claims made by other people. If the subject ends up being exposed during the process of my debunking, it's likely because it was either hidden behind their public claims or necessary to bring to light alongside the claims being debunked. Finally, I have looked at your video. For one thing, most of the evidence against Tirza is cropped in such a way that it honestly doesn't fly as proper evidence, and I'm not particularly happy regarding the claims of the self-harm shown characters. This is especially after you state that people who self-harm do not show it off, using yourself as an example.
Whoa.
And I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you are doing better. Only to then acknowledge that Tirza, in fact, self-harms and showcases it off. I'm mostly not happy about this because it's not being considered that showcasing her scars, sorry, it should be their scars, is potentially a means of coping, which could be carried into their work. It's merely presented as they self-harm and draw characters who have self-harmed, and that's gross. You are not considering all sides. There are screenshots that you admit have absolutely no evidence to back them besides testimony from people we can't even be sure are telling the truth. The cat abuse. Also, after having come off of my video of the Sashley drama where an alleged victim of pedophilia is being blamed for being that victim and potentially coping with that abuse, it was proven false, but I hope you understand where I'm coming from. I'm not particularly happy with the indication that who Tirza is dating is abusive and that this abuse carries into Tirza's work as though that is Tirza's fault. If anything, it sounds like you're blaming a victim of abuse for being a victim of abuse and coping with it in their artwork. I'm really not happy about that point. To speak honestly, if I was going to make a video on this person, I would be covering parts of I would be covering parts of your video as well. Based on what I'm seeing, this really isn't okay. This artist may potentially be a toxic person and might steal OC designs, but the latter half of your video is completely inappropriate. I will not be addressing this. I encourage you to take down that video, and if you remain concerned regarding the theft of OC designs, re-upload a new one focusing only on what you have proper evidence for and not the elements that almost blame Tirza for potentially not being in a good mental state or relationship.
So, did anybody in chat hear Ponder calling them stupid yet? Because I haven't. Anyways, here's how Tirza responded. I apologize. Or not Tirza, Chimerama responded. I apologize. I will be taking the video down. I've had very bad run-ins with them, so I'm undoubtedly biased in the situation. This is very rushed due to my anxiety spiking every time I force myself to work on it, and that is my own fault that I didn't go in deeper about the situation in screenshots. Like I said in the video, the screenshots weren't taken by me, but by previous victims of the user, and I didn't have the context behind a lot of them. Just, that's a problem. I'm sorry that you're going through burnout. I didn't mean to disturb you or anything, and I truly hope things get better for you and your mental state. But thank you so much for taking the time to reply and give me feedback on the situation despite your current predicament. I wouldn't want this to be covered if I was self-aware and noticed the mistakes myself. I will be taking the video down. That's interesting. Okay. Now we can move on to your, I'm guessing these are Twitter DMs?
No, these are also DeviantArt DMs. DeviantArt has a chat system and it has a direct message system. The chat system was more recently introduced. I don't think it existed when Chimerama first reached out to me. I think that was actually the year after, and that is how I contacted Chimerama when I came back to this topic.
Okay, so this is when you got that email saying, hey, yo, the video's still up, and you're like, excuse? So go ahead, you're the opening line
Well,
here.
I didn't get an email saying, hey, yo, the video's still up. I got someone else who I guess had seen Chimerama's video and came to me, or actually, it might not have been Chimerama's video. It may have been, because I know that a couple other users did videos on Dolly Guts around the time that I was contacted again. I know Omnia was one. I know another user did it, but their name escapes me in the moment. But I remember watching the video, and I was equally not happy. And I think I was originally going to cover that video, but I went back to it and I watched it a little later and I was like, okay, when I watched this video, I was clearly a little angry and I was reading into things. It's not nearly as bad as I remember it being. So I didn't end up covering that one, but it ended up being taken down after my Dolly Guts video. So it was like, fine. All right.
All right, so you open with this one.
Yeah. So it's not totally visible here, but I actually sent 2 screenshots to Chimerama before I messaged her, and it was screenshots of the videos, like still being up.
Yeah, I figured.
So then I say, given our last interaction, I would like to ask your reasoning as to why this video remained up.
Hello, I decided not to take the video down because I believe I have every right to talk about the subject considering of my involvement with the artists and the research I put into their history. I'm not going to let the opinion of someone else influence my decisions, even if I used to be a fan of yours. My asking of you to make a video on the subject was immature, and I regret contacting you about that, especially since I know you are struggling with your own issues right now. My intentions were not to harm the artists, but to warn others about them. A lot of orbiters of this particular person have dealt with self-harm because of the content they make and how they represent it, which is an issue. Sure, the way they drew the sort of crap may have been a coping mechanism, but that doesn't make it morally correct, especially if putting people as young as 12 in danger of harming themselves. You're allowed to have a different opinion about the matter, but it's my channel, my research, and a video I worked hard on to warn others about this user. You don't control my actions. I hope you're doing better. Good day. And then,
Okay.
there you go.
And I respond. Oh, sorry. I'm gonna zoom in. I respond with, in that case, what led you to removing the video now? Because, like, as I was talking to Chimerama, I remember, like, the video went down.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, similarly, why have you also removed my comment from your third video? Because I posted a comment on the third video, if I remember correctly, acknowledging the fact that I told Chimerama about the issues with their third video, and then they came out with with their first video, and then they came out with the second and third.
Oh, goodness. I never removed the video. I think it was taken down by YouTube themselves. And I don't think I ever removed your comment.
I said, okay, the comment was gone, so I figured it must have been removed. So if YouTube was the one to remove the video, I suppose that means you still stand by the stay away from Dolly Guts video.
I do. Although I do regret not putting effort into the video. I was very emotionally unstable during the making of it and rushed it just to get it out there to warn others. I made a claim about them abusing their cats when there was no evidence to back that up because I was in a bad place, and I am completely aware that was wrong of me. If I had the time and effort to rework that video, I would, and maybe I will someday. But I doubt that would be anytime soon. I still believe they're a bad person. They hurt me, and friends of mine, and have traumatized countless people with their content, and still do to an extent. I apologize if anything I say comes off in a hostile manner. I'm not trying to respond that way.
And I respond, that's fine, although I'm afraid I'm a tad confused. You mentioned that you regret bringing up the allegations regarding animal abuse because of the lacking evidence, but there were far more accusations that lacked sufficient evidence, or really any acceptable evidence at all, and I had brought this up to you when you first messaged me back in October. That was the entire reason I suggested removing that video and reworking it to focus primarily on personal experience and the claims that could actually be demonstrated to a degree.
I think you're correct when saying I should have just reworked the video because there was a lot more evidence to the claims made that I didn't include. I'm not an expert at making videos, especially in an informative sense, so I do understand that. I'd rather not continue to talk about the subject. I consider it all in the past, and I move past it now. If you're interested in the subject still, you can do your own research. I found the kiwi farms on Salem particularly helpful in that area. I would also suggest the LOCAL forums, but there are a lot of slurs used in that particular thread that are less than tasteful. OOC here, like, you're recommending LOCAL and kiwi farms, but you only warn about the slurs on LOCAL? Oh, okay. I'm sorry to cut the conversation short. I'd just rather not talk about the subject anymore because it brings back a lot of traumatic memories from that time span. I apologize.
I respond, that's rather the issue. I've done my research because I had actually been looking into it by the time I contacted Chimerama. I've done my research and have come to realize that your video was significantly more flawed than you or even I upon initial inspection realized. This is especially considering the nature of, well, all of your sources. And then If this is your reaction to simply being messaged about it, then I'm afraid I should preemptively inform you that I'm planning on a commentary for that video. The script is a little over half done. It will likely be the video done immediately after the four-parter I'm currently working on, and will delve into your videos on the matter, the accusers, the accusations, and your listed sources. Hopefully, this early notice of that will help you prepare or distance yourself from the situation as needed, but I still hope that you will acknowledge what is to be said and why this entire situation was inappropriate.
Okie dokie. You can make your video and have your opinions about the matter, but you do not have the personal experience I and many others have had with this artist. I understand my videos are flawed. It's expected from someone who isn't experienced in the field. But there was nothing wrong with me sharing my story, and that's true, and you never told her otherwise. In fact, you told her to
I said
just
that
share
that
her
was
story.
okay.
Right? There was nothing wrong with me warning others about this harmful person. I have inflicted harm upon myself because of the content that they produce, and I've had to deal with that ever since. Do not invalidate my experiences that have personally caused me and others trauma in your commentary, which you didn't. You have not experienced the mental scars we've endured because of Salem, how violated we feel by their actions. You're completely allowed to have your own opinion on the matter, as you weren't involved, but as someone who was friends with them for months. Okay, so they were friends at some point. We'll double back on that.
That's what Chimerama said, yeah.
Yeah, we'll check with things later. And have dealt with the backlash of getting out of it. I don't believe you have any right to speak for the victims. Good luck with your commentary, but I can't guarantee I'm going to watch it. It feels as if you haven't listened to anything anyone has to say. Well, what do you mean anyone? There's only one person. So, I don't know about the rest of the chat, but I still don't recall the word stupid being used, or any condensation. There was no condensation. Any not condemnation. There was some of that, but condescension. Thank you. Like the condemnation was proper. This is actually proper rebuke. There was nothing wrong here. You didn't say anything out of line. Jeez. But you're the one that made this public, clearly.
I mean, I guess technically after the video was removed, I made it public again to try to fix everything that had happened, given that it was up for a year. Yes, I did do that.
You can't put the cat back in the bag, though, can you?
Cat scratches.
Yes, they do. That's actually why, this is going to upset the chat, I did have to kick Gidget out of the office because she just kept obsessing. I have a piece of trash, a McDonald's bag at the top of the trash can, and she just wanted it. And no, it is not good to let Kitty dig through trash. It builds bad behavior. So I had to excuse the Gidge from the office. But no, going through the video, I really wish it was more about accountability and here's all my growth, which she did do a bit of the growth stuff, which what she has talked about, getting away from the freak, the creep, all that's good. That is to be applauded. Her art improving is also really nice. That was really pretty. But continuing to blame others for her missteps is an issue. And just Ponder did it out of spite. If Ponder could put together 2 videos of that quality and quantity out of spite, I want to know where she got her spite from, because I need it.
I'd drink it like a juice. Well, that's the thing I was extra confused by, because, like, I remember at the beginning of the video, Chimerama was all like, this is done by people who don't know anything about me, but also, she said that she and Tirza were friends,
Yeah.
so wouldn't Tirza know something about you? But also, she doesn't know anything about me. She doesn't know why I specifically used to, like, latch onto instances where I'm like, this person is lying, and they're doing it to hurt someone else and destroy them in the community and make it so that nobody wants to be friends with them. That's a problem. I'm going to point out to everybody that this is a lie, or that this is badly presented, or that this is misconstrued, or like this is misunderstood. Like, she doesn't know anything about me. She doesn't know why I do that or did that.
No. Again, it's just double standards, which hopefully she'll grow out of. This stream's purpose, like I said earlier, isn't to dunk on this person consistently or, haha, you will be hoisted by your own petard. It's more of a, come on. I hope she does better.
In
Go ahead.
Moxie brings up, I want to bet that Chimerama only remembers the designs that Ponder made in the video and chalks it up to spite as a result. That is possible, except I did those as an exercise to myself to showcase that you could do characters that were based on other people's characters and not inherently have them be ripoffs. I like my art footage to be connected to what I'm talking about, which is inherently one of the reasons that my videos take so long, is because I have to make art footage that can be used in the videos. I don't just like putting in any random thing. And for those videos in particular, I made characters based on a bunch of the characters that Tirza was accused of stealing, as well as a couple of Tirza's characters, to prove that you could be inspired by characters and still come up with your own thing that is distinct enough that someone would be all like, oh, I can see it's inspired by that thing, but they're not the same thing.
Exactly. And
Also, that doesn't make any sense because I didn't just make a character based off of Chimerama's character. I made a character based on some of the other people who were also accusing Tirza of copying their characters, as well as Tirza's characters.
goodness.
So, like, by that logic, I'm spiteful to all of them and Dolly Guts as well.
The truth of the matter is you're just spiteful to me, which is why you get the cat to steal socks.
Yes.
Well, I do hope, and again, I don't want... please don't go and mess with this person, any of you listening to this. Because I will get mad. And I know enough of you that are regulars to know if you goof up, I will find you. And I will say, hey, you stop that. Chimerama, you're welcome to join the server to talk. Not in a public call or anything, like just as a way to get a hold of me. I do want to help you report this person. If you have anything we can use, I can help you with that, because this guy does need to be reported. What he's done is, if what you're saying is accurate, and I'm not going to put doubt on that, he needs to be reported. Even if you don't have everything, something should be put there. So, what we're going to do right now real quick before I go, because my wife's texting me like, old man, go to sleep. So let me go ahead and go through the super chats that we had not covered yet. Hive for $5 says, as the resident demon worshiper, Chimerama shouldn't use her religion as a shield, but just the shark being a dink. He's the shark. So, thank you. Pink Panther 99, $5. Ouch, I stubbed my toe on this fig tree. I curse ye, fig tree, to bear fruit no more. Take that. Well, technically it was the fig tree looked like it bore fruit. It didn't, and Jesus made it die for being deceptive. Pink Panther 99 again, $5. LioConvoy, I highly suggest you watch Dragonheart if you haven't watched Dragonheart yet. It's a great dragon movie, as well as Damsel. Both are good. Look to the stars, Bowen. Jevy Bev for $10. The term she was thinking of, which we talked about earlier, is hybristophilia. Buddha Cat for $2 says Dong Fidel. You're welcome, Lio. Thank you. Pink Panther again for $5. LioConvoy, you should watch Hellsing. That movie is the bomb. Best lycanthropy design. Fight me on it. And Pink Panther one more time for another $5 with another recommendation. LioConvoy, you should also watch Vampire Hunter D Bloodrust. Great anime with a futuristic goth horror aesthetic. It's a great anime. Well, I'll think about it. I'm not really into horror stuff. It bores me. I do know about Hellsing, though. I hang out with enough people that are interested in that character. And I'll leave it to that. Alright, well, thank you for joining me, Ponder. I really appreciate your input, because you were literally at ground zero for all of this, so I appreciate that.
I mean, I did talk about how you should be allowed to talk about your experiences. Technically, I did experience it, so blah.
True. And one more super chat from Lousy Lou Loser, $5. No matter what, don't look at our DMs. I've already looked at it, but she sent me a porcelain doll.
My brain stopped at poor and filled in something else.
Oh God, I've had people do that. I had Baiji do that.
I believe you.
I had Baiji do that to me just to mess with me, and it was Serafina porn. I'm like, I didn't need to see this, Baiji. Why? Okay, so next stream, I'm not really sure exactly what we're going to talk about. Maybe we'll go over Brian Mullen's How to Be a Parent video, because I need to bring Monstrous on, because I heard that video was god-awful. It's just... Apparently he advocates for CSEM to be made for some reason.
Fuck.
I don't know. This is a guy who's thoroughly convinced that because of the Muppets being put on the Trinity Broadcasting Network, that parents went into a frenzy and ate their children during Christmas. So, you know.
Oh, oh, I need to lie down.
Aren't you already lying down?
I was, but now I'm walking around, and now I'm on the floor.
Yes, he calls it the roast game. But yeah, go through a stream on that. I want to. August is going to be a month where I just do things that are fun. I might have to talk about a couple other drama topics. I'm trying to alter, for the most part, how I discuss these things. One topic I'm going to be essentially dead set on condemnation because of who the topic is and what they did. But this isn't somebody I have personal back and forth with, so I guess that's good. Also, Zigzag, thank you. Have a good night, Lyle. Hope you have one too. We want tiny robots. You will get them. I will do some Transformers this month, I promise. And yes, the bird will be returning because he needs to. But I thank you all for your time right now, and I'm going to go ahead and click to the end card, and I will catch you all later.